What's up, party people, and welcome to Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Classic. Each week we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the upcoming Classic servers. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything relating to the upcoming release of World of Warcraft Classic. Now, many of you know that I've been on the hunt for sponsors or advertisers, and I'm still absolutely looking for more, but I'm so happy to finally announce that the show has its first official ad spot and supporter in ClassicWow.live. The site is founded by multiple regulars of the show, and I'm so pleased that they're happy to be able to return the favor and support me directly. Just in time for the stress test, the team over at ClassicWow.live has a beta version of their interactive leveling tool for the community to test and use. The leveling tool gives a fun, smooth leveling experience and is optimized for every class, even warriors, and also supports duo or group leveling. Test it out tomorrow. They want your feedback. Full Horde and Alliance versions will be available prior to the launch of Classic. Visit them online at ClassicWow.live to see this and other great tools like their detailed Azeroth Atlas, character gear list, and lots of guides and other Classic WoW content. ClassicWow.live is a community site built by passionate Classic fans like Ale, Taladril, and Melderon. Together they make up a team of master theory crafters, dedicated guide makers, and entertainers. For more information about them and their tools or becoming part of the community, visit them at ClassicWow.live and join their community today. Now it's time for another quick Classic Lost and Found, and Irulan is looking for players that played on the Azune EU server, especially those who were in or played with the guild Righteous on the Alliance side. He says dozens of us are already back together on Discord and planning on playing Classic together. We'd love to find more people to join us to relive the old days. So people, you can find Irulan on Discord. That's IRULAN. So please do hit him up if that fits you. Today on the show, everyone, we've got class chat coming out the wazoo as the show introduces a short-lived 2-week pre-launch special segment of why your class rocks and sucks. We're trying to help out those of you that might need that one final push either towards or away from a certain class. So I hope you all get a kick out of that. Along with that, we'll be starting with some of the news about Name Reservation Day and the final stress test coming up very soon. So let's get into it. You know everything I usually say here, guys. Discord, Twitter, Patreon, Ko-Fi, merch store. Go check it all out. But for now, let's start the show. Alright, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call, and I've called in 2 guests at the last second about this one because I was just explaining to them that I wasn't thinking about covering this for the show, just thinking, the final stress test. Well, it's just another stress test. We've seen what happens on those. Nothing too exciting there. No major news. And then I thought about it a bit more. A listener got in touch and said, Josh, surely you're covering this. And I was like, nah. But then I was like, hang on. Maybe there is a little bit to discuss here because there was a blue post, obviously, about it and a little bit of an interesting throwaway line there that might have some people interested in what Blizzard might be doing in terms of servers filling up. So let me introduce my guest. It's funny because one of the people on this call who I'll introduce first, you were in the last episode and that call was recorded months ago. And at the end of it, I said, we can't wait too long before we get you back on the show. Well, here you are 1 week later. Taladril, how are you, mate?
Glad to be back.
And joining us as well is someone I've been dying to get back on the show for a long time. You all heard him talking about multi-boxing many months ago, and you knew him under the name of Helbethkar then. You've since taken on a new name, Galgamere. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, Josh. Yourself?
Really well, mate. Really well. Thanks for being here, guys. I put up the bat signal at the last second, and let's dive into it. Look, let's talk stress tests in general. And Taladril, I might start with you because coming at it from, outside of the fun, when everyone just dives in and goes, oh, how long is it going to take to get on? And will I get on? And I'll race to 15 or I'll muck around with mates and see what the, devs might have in store for us during this stress test. Outside of all that, when we look a bit more at maybe the theory crafting side of things or any work that's yet to be done that we didn't get done in beta testing, is there anything that you yourself, whether or not you actually get involved in the stress test, is actually quite interested in figuring out for this one?
Not really for figuring out anything new. I think it'll be interesting. We might see a little bit more understanding for how the layering is going to work because they're really going to have a lot of population. So we'll get a really clear idea of how many people are probably going to be on, how do spawns work for questing as you're going in a really populated zone, that kind of thing. But not really from a theory crafting standpoint, just more from what we expect from day one kind of standpoint.
Fair comment, absolutely. And layering, obviously, still a very hot topic. And in the time that's passed since we last discussed it on the show, and just in the past week, there was that Eurogamer article that came out that a lot of people were talking about. I chose not to talk about it on the show because I actually thought it was really a bit of a nothing article. A lot of people saying, wow, so much is being revealed here. I just thought it told us nothing. But there was one very, very minor throwaway line in that article that basically had Blizzard saying, look, in the beta, we weren't using layering like we intend on using it. And I'm massively paraphrasing there, so please allow me a little bit of leeway. But, obviously with more and more people getting involved that might be there on the stress test that weren't there on the beta, maybe they can sort of, drop the pedal to the metal and go, here's layering. Galgamere, is that kind of what you're expecting?
I'm expecting exactly that, and it's pretty obvious as well because from all the betas and everything like that they had a pretty good sample size of what people saw and what people could expect. But it was also a case that is this exactly going to be what we're going to have? And I don't think it is the final product. This stress test will hopefully unveil the final sample we'll have before we get into live itself. Then we can see whether or not there are still a lot of issues behind it, which for them will be the telltale going forward for retail mostly. But it's still going to be a big issue for us in the interim up until we get that second phase happening. I think it's even beyond that. But it's the inevitable just waiting to happen. We've just got to wait and see, really.
Fair enough. Now, I know the guys over at Fight Club, the Warrior Discord, will be doing some things in the stress test. I think they mentioned on their last call here on the show that they had a few things that they still wanted to tinker with. And, all the things that we discussed in that group call with them is stuff that might flare up. And obviously, you can check out their Discord if you want to see if they're talking about it over there. But then we've got the fun side of things. And I haven't actually asked, I think both of you maybe aren't getting involved in this stress test. Taladril, is that right?
Actually, I am.
Oh.
Not involved. I'm just going to dabble. It's close enough to the name reserving that, might as well just tack it on.
Yeah, absolutely. But Galgamere, you said you might not be able to make it. Is that right?
Most likely not. I mean, it just depends on how it goes when we're actually into the late hours of the days. But, I mean, it probably won't be a factor for myself. It just really depends on what I'm doing. But, yeah, probably not.
All right. I haven't been involved with one myself. This is the one that I probably will get involved with because here's another big thing, Taladril, that we'll get into. Because I'm the worst person in the world and I do all of this stuff at the last minute. I haven't set up any of the add-ons or anything that I want happening. I don't have my UI ready to go. I really haven't spent enough time looking into that. And I want that crisp when I drop in on day one. So I'm going to have to get involved in this stress test and set all that up and maybe not so much play the game, but work that out. Are you going to do something similar?
Yeah, it's actually a really good idea. For me, it was that, making sure I understood that everything was hooked up, ready to go, so that when the name change, or not, the name reservation hit, that I'd be 100% ready for that. And just try out some, see what it looks like, just, because I've only seen it in vids so far, so it'd be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. There's, I think Elv UI, something came out recently that said they will be ready to go for day one of Classic, which a lot of people are breathing a sigh of relief over. Yeah, absolutely. Galgamere, you're one of them, I know. Our beloved Mike from the Discord is another one of those who's very, very passionate about Elv UI. I've not used it myself, but I'm very, very keen to check it out in Classic. Now, there's a bunch of other UIs, not a million of them, but there's a few core, not UIs, a few core add-ons that are ready to go for Classic. So I do advise everyone to go and check out what is ready. Do a bit of a hunt around and you will be able to find that information pretty easily about what you can get your hands on, because yeah, it's always good to be set up and ready to go. Galgamere, even though you might not be getting involved, what are the kinds of things, and obviously with your multi-boxing, keeping that in mind as well, what kind of add-ons will you be like looking to set up straight away when launch day comes?
Primarily, as you say, like my multi-boxing setup itself, that's a sort of an external program anyway, which works within WoW, but there is an actual internal, add-on that works along to make my grouping easier, to make my loot distribution easier, all that sort of stuff. Most of that I could actually transfer from retail because the platform itself is essentially the same. So it shouldn't be a great deal of setup. I can kind of fluff it all in retail now and then copy it over. For the most part, otherwise, just the basic stuff like quest completist, auctioneer, mailbox, all that sort of stuff, but pretty basic stuff. I'm not getting too into rating just yet. So, recount and all those sort of things like, DB meters and all that stuff, I don't really need just yet.
Okay. Now, here's the interesting part of the blue post that I wanted to highlight, guys. And Taladril, I'll throw it back to you for this one because you actually hadn't heard this and it was news to you when I mentioned it to you. So let's go over it because I said that, Blizzard is actually giving us a little bit of a warning about, the realm that you're choosing in terms of name reservations. So everyone knows, on this episode as well, I'll be playing a call all about name reservations. People are aware that that's coming up. You can do it for 3 characters per account, not per server, per account. Please do keep that in mind. Now, but when you go and you assumedly pick your server to reserve that name on, Blizzard has told us via this blue post just in the last sort of 24 hours or so that we will post warnings about the potential for long queues on those realms, giving you time to choose alternate realms. That's an interesting little wrinkle, don't you think there, Taladril?
Yeah, definitely. I've been saying it for a while now that I can guarantee you Blizzard is going to spin up too few servers initially, and hopefully even this will be a bit of a wake-up call for them where there's going to be 1 million people reserving names and whatever else. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how many of those are going to get the it's going to be a large population warning. Like if all of them, then yeah, they're going to have to be spinning up some extra servers, probably even between the name change and release.
Galgamere, I can hear you slightly moaning in agreement there, mate. Now, you also think that they probably won't have too many servers?
I didn't think I was that close to the microphone. There we are. No, I absolutely agree with what Taladril's saying there. And, it's spot on that it will be a massive wake-up call, I believe, for Blizzard to know how much, the community cares about this game, and especially getting back into Classic, vanilla as it was. I just think it's going to be, we're going to be in queues. We will be in queues waiting. 8 a.m. come that morning for 8 a.m. for us anyway, Sydney Eastern time. I don't think I'm going to get in straight away. I honestly think I'm going to be plastered just
for character creation.
Exactly right. Spot on.
Yeah, I believe it.
I can see it now. It's going to be painful badly. But it's kind of the same every time you had a new expansion release. You could not get in for those first couple of hours. You'd be, number 2,000 in the queue or whatever it was. I can see the exact same thing happening just for character creation, let alone getting into the game on launch day.
It's interesting you say that. I've actually been, sorry, Taladril, 1 second. I just want to go over this with the Aussie servers because it's interesting to hear you say that, Galgamere, because I've been thinking just over the last few days, like clicking my heels, skipping along, going, fucking, how good is this? They're going to have an Aussie server, presumably located in Australia. It's launching at 8 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. I've got leave off of work. All you other suckers can eat my dust because I don't think that I'm going to have any troubles. And you're saying, hold your horses.
Well,
yep.
Yeah, I'm getting into work early just so I can load up my laptop so I can actually jump on all my accounts and create these characters. And I can just see a massive waiting queue. I really can. And I don't think I'm going to have time before I actually need to start work to be able to reserve those names. I really can't see it.
Fair enough. Now, Taladril, sorry, I'll throw it back to you, mate. Did you have something else on that?
Not specifically on that, but I think it's interesting. To me, the telltale sign where I was like, oh, they are still not getting this, which they finally recanted, but was the fact that they're like, oh, no, we're not going to have European language-specific servers. I'm like, how few servers do you think you are going to have that you don't have enough to at least throw one server towards every language? Like, are you kidding me?
It's interesting. Now, I want to not gloss over the important part that we sort of talked about. Now, Taladril, in terms of that warning that we might get, let's say I'm creating a character during name reservation day. I've got my name ready to go, XX Legolas XX, and I choose a server exactly. And a little warning comes up and goes, hey, just to let you know, this server's getting kind of populated. Press on at your own, you consider yourself warned, basically. What do you think of that? Because you mentioned just before we started recording that obviously some people could see that as a positive or a negative. So why don't you go into that a bit more?
Well, that's actually interesting. We were just talking because there's a few people that I'm not going to be joining their raid group or whatever, but they were saying that they were seeing some information about this whole conglomeration of guilds that are planning on rolling on the same server specifically for high levels of competition. So I was like, man, so there's some groups that are definitely going to be trying to find the most populated server. Other ones are probably going to be trying to avoid that. So it'll be an interesting balance to see what that is. I also saw something where people were saying, hey, are all the private server people going to try and band together to be in one server too? So it's like, that's interesting take on that too.
Galgamere, I'll throw it to you because I think that there's two different kind of main takes that people might knee-jerk to if they do see that warning coming up about the server you've chosen is getting a little full. Now, they first immediately might think, ooh, is this the streamer server? Is this for some reason a streamer has transmitted to his fans that this is where he's going and now the bandwagon is filling up? The other thought that might come into people's minds might be, hey, that's a good thing. I won't be on what could turn into a dead realm. So what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, on point one, it's varied because, I mean, the Americans have a very different setup to, us Aussies down here. Essentially, we believe we're going to get maybe 4 servers, 2 PvE, 2 PvP, and that's going to be the bulk of it. But in general, though, it is a take that, is, the reason why everyone's going to this server or this server, because there's so many banded together groups that have actually come this way. They're following a streamer. They plastered already. Hey guys, I'm going to be on this particular server. Come join me or whatever like that. It's hard to say. On the second point, though, it is a good point because, I mean, especially if you're talking about PvP, because if people want that true world PvP experience, which is what we're going to have for the first couple of phases anyway, you want to be on a population server where you're not going to have to walk around for ages like you had on the beta, for example, that, you're waiting for people to come across. You want that actual feeling of being clustered in. You want to feel like there's a lot of people around here. I better be on edge. Or there's a lot of people around here. Hey, look at over there. I've got, fellow hordes or fellow alliance I can band together with and we can take down these other people. So there is 2 very different sides to it. It's just about whether people have already found a guild they're joining. Because if they have, you don't have a choice because they're not going to keep saying at the last minute, oh, you better change, because maybe some people have already signed up. They've already got their name reserved, So if you're on your own, it's a different story. You could bop and change between whatever one you want. If you were the guild, though, you just got to cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah, I'm sure people will definitely, in their guts, want to avoid what could be a low pop server and get that experience. I mean, no one's going to get anything quite like what I got in the beta, where I'm deeming it sort of shittily like strangled board veil because I was the only prick around. I know it's not going to be anything like that once Classic launches, so it's fine. But
yeah, that is an extreme, but it's still a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's a really interesting thing. And obviously people will be rallying the troops once the server list comes out, and letting their friends know where they're rolling. And it really will be interesting to see how this all plays out once we know where certain guilds are going, where certain streamers are going, and how that population is looking to have balanced out. Taladril, in terms of your plans now, have you been looking at, I guess I should say this, the server names, they've said, I think they've said they want to do something different. Am I going crazy for thinking I've heard that somewhere? But, Cat Taladril, do you go for the coolest sounding name, or how will you do it?
I'm going to be picking West Coast because I'm so sick of East Coast rating times. That's my bottom line. Okay,
so names don't matter to you. A name is just a name.
Yeah.
All right, Galgamere, how about you, mate?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm with a guild, so I mean, I'll be following whatever they deem to be the one. Hopefully, they pick something cool. But I mean, yeah, I haven't heard anything about they be doing something different with the names. But I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, it would set them apart from retail, but it kind of goes against the grain. Like, it was related to the game in some form or fashion. Like, they had locations or people. But yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I'm not fussed either way, to be honest.
Okay. Now, we'll go through second last question for you too. Any predictions or anything you want to see in this third and final stress test where it's global, baby? Everyone's there. Taladril, how about you?
I just hope to see the turnout that I'm expecting. That just would be validation. That would be good.
All right. Galgamere?
Yeah, I pretty much reciprocate that. I'd love to know or actually see, a full server. I'd love to see people absolutely everywhere. I'd love to hear there's a queue, that you can't get in because they're overfilling the server, and it's a full server. It's not like, a 5,000 cap or whatever. It is a full server. I'd love to know and see that, because that would be, gratification that it is going to work.
Okay. Now, to put you guys sort of on the hot seat, Taladril, you sort of alluded to this before, and you've both said that you expect low numbers, but if you were to guess, and we'll do the old guess how many, jelly beans are in the jar, even though we can't see the jar, how many servers do you think we're going to see on that list in terms of number? We'll play closest to the pin.
I'm being very pessimistic about it. I think there's probably 20.
Wow. Okay, Galgamere?
I'm going to change my number now. On a whole, I'm going to say 24, only because I'm going to include Oceanic, because I reckon there'll be 20 for Americas, 4 for us. I couldn't say about Euro, but I mean, they probably included maybe 1 or 2 for them. I mean, they're probably getting the short end of the stick.
All right. Now, I'm going to be wild because I can't lose here if I go a little bit high in playing closest to the pin. I'll say something like 45. And I know that's a lot higher than what people are expecting, but I don't know. I can't lose if I go that high. No, but it'll be really interesting to see how it does all play out. I guess the rationale behind my guess would be something like, Australia 4, America, I don't know, 30, and America 25 and Europe 15. I don't know. I'm making it all up and thinking on the fly. But let's see. A lot of people are picking a number in the 25 to 30-ish range, so time will tell. But best of luck, everyone, on the stress test if you get there, and thanks so much for talking about this, guys. I do appreciate it. Taladril, always a pleasure to have you back, mate. And what's going on with you? Throw out a plug for what you're working on at the moment.
We're busy working on the website right now, trying to get the leveling guide. Hopefully that will be out for the stress test, and it would be amazing because it's going to be really cool to use.
And that's obviously classicwow.live. You guys would have heard me talk about that earlier in the episode. And thanks again, obviously, to Taladril and the gang for getting involved with the show in that way. I can't thank you guys enough. And Galgamere, I'll turn to you, mate. It was so good having you back. We need to not wait so long next time.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Joss, as always.
Coming soon on my other podcast, The Cinephiles, we cover 1988's Big. Because we've all been there when the family or the mum or the parents together, whatever, call out to you in a very inopportune moment where you're, hi, honey, wave to me.
Josh, your fly's open, your little stiffy showing.
Jesus Christ.
Well, that's what I heard your mum yell out across the road at you the other day.
last week, exactly.
And I was like, Josh, you're in Hyde Park. For God's sake, this is why we don't go outside for lunch.
Not near the pigeons.
Josh!
Come back.
Mom.
No.
Josh!
Mom, you're embarrassing me in front of the homeless people.
You're embarrassing me in front of the backpackers who are sunbathing.
That's the war memorial the other way.
If you'd like to hear more from the Cinephiles, then please do log on to cinephiles.com. That's SINNERFILES. Or search for the Cinephiles on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. But now, let's get back to Countdown. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call. And Countdown to Classic has been lucky enough to have a few celebrities on the show before, and that has been absolutely unbelievable from my perspective. I really do get blown away by some of the names that do put their hands up to come on the show. But today, we might have the biggest name of them all, the first World of Warcraft classic celebrity, if you will. Now, some of you might be scratching your heads going, what the fuck is Josh talking about? If you haven't been hanging out on the WoW Classic subreddit, a lot of this will be foreign to you, but we'll clue you in. A little thing happened through the week with, a post that went up about name reservations. And obviously a lot of you know that day is coming up very soon. By the date of publication of this recording, it'll be just a few days away. And the person on the line got to asking the community about what their plans were for names, and then a bit of madness happened. And so I'd really like to welcome to the show Thex. How are you, mates?
So well, I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Great to have you. Now, look, Thex, let's just get into the story of what happened. You obviously sat down and decided one day to have a little bit of a chat. The show just talked recently about forum use, and you're obviously over there on the WoW Classic subreddit, decided to chat with people. And why don't you tell people what happened?
Well, it's a funny little story. So I, like all of us, have been anxiously anticipating World of Warcraft Classic. We've all been looking forward to it for years at this point. And so I get on the subreddit and I make an innocent little post saying that, it was exactly 2 weeks away from the name reservation day. So me being, the excitable guy that I am, hopped on there and asked the question, hey guys, what do you plan on playing? And what is your name going to be? And I introduced myself. I said, I'm going to be playing a shaman named Thex, which is probably the sentence that everyone's most familiar with. So, after a couple of comments, I quickly realized that I may have made a little mistake, because most people aren't going to come onto the subreddit and post their, hilarious name, holy cow, the paladin. In fear that someone is going to steal it. And so now the running joke, because of all this, is I am basically the victim of identity theft 100 times over.
And so, well, obviously you said, as you said, the famous line was you wanted to call yourself Thex. Now, that's a bit of a problem, mate, because, and as you found out, that's my name. So what are we going to do here? I'm Thex.
Yeah, we're all Thex in a way.
Well, obviously that's the meme that sprung out of it. And I got a good laugh out of some of the responses, like that kind of I am Spartacus moment where everyone's standing up and claiming your name. Mate, let's go through it. What's happened as a result of that post, because it wasn't just that one. I'm now seeing the I am Thex response popping up everywhere on completely unrelated posts. It's just sort of caught fire, and I really do get a kick out of it. Have you been spotting that?
I would be lying if I said that I wasn't constantly keyword searching my name. Like every WoW forum, YouTube, I've been looking for it everywhere, because I honestly did not realize that it was going to explode in this way. It's like shrapnel hitting all different parts of the internet at this point. It's really strange. It's surreal, to say the least.
Well, mate, it's one of those things. I mean, obviously the internet loves a good meme, and I think gamers love a good meme, but in particular World of Warcraft players love a good meme, and this one has definitely caught everyone's interest. So Thex, congratulations on getting the ball rolling. And I think prior to launch, that's quite the achievement. So well done. But mate, let's have a bit of a chat about names in general, because that's something that I'm wrestling with at the moment. I've got a few in mind. I'm obviously not going to say them on the show, or else we're going to have a I am Thex moment from Countdown to Classic. But mate, talk to me about that name Thex. And is that one that you've used for quite some time? Are you married to it? Do you have others that you juggle with? Tell me all about it.
Well, at this point, this might be a bit cheesy to say, but it's effectively my identity in game. Anyone that played with me, I think the last time I seriously logged into World of Warcraft was about 5 years ago around Mists of Pandaria. So anyone that played with me way back almost a decade ago would instantly recognize me through that name. Every one of my characters had that 4-letter word stuck in it somewhere. So I am definitely tied to it in the same way that most people are tied to their real name. You know, you hear it over and over again for years upon years, and it just becomes stuck to you. It's your identity, and I guess I'm tied to it that way.
It calls me back to a famous quote from The Wire where you think of like Marlo Stanfield, I'm not sure if you watch, going, "My name is my name." And like a lot of people are really married to their names. So I appreciate that that's something that they keep close to the chest. And, you know, everyone will be rushing in on, you know, name day, if you will, the reservation day, praying that they get their name. But you know, obviously there's some unique ones where you see people saying, "Well, nobody's going to have my name. It's so unique. I don't have to worry." But you know, there's a lot of common ones out there as well that will be taken up. And then obviously you've got all the people rushing to claim the streamers' names and whatnot. You know, everyone's going to be doing that. And of course, you know, XX Legolas XX and things like that. But tell me, in terms of what goes into a good name, I found that World of Warcraft tends to gravitate away from RP style names, and you know, it's not a game where you find things like you know, like can't even think of a good RP name, like, you know, I'm trying. I want to say mine, but then I can't because someone will take it. But you know what I mean? Like the names are generally like Dick Nose or fucking you know, Troll God X, things like that. You know, yeah. they're more gamer names than RP names, if you know what I mean. Why do you think that World of Warcraft does gravitate towards that?
That's a really good question. I've never really thought about that. You know, I've played a lot of MMOs in my day, and you know, for every RP name out there on World of Warcraft, there's probably a hilarious one. And I'm guessing at this point that I think WoW kind of has a lot more room to play around with alternate characters, you know, whereas most people stick to one in other MMOs. Maybe I'm wrong. I've played a lot, and that seems to be the theme. So when someone is playing WoW and they're making, you know, 2 or 3 characters, it gets to a point where, you know, they aren't just one name, one special identity. They're a whole bunch of like mini identities, right? Logging into your alt or whatever. So they want it to be a little more unique. So, you know, when you're online and you see your guildie pop in and he has, you know, one particular name, you know, he's on that character. And so people kind of give themselves like mini identities for however many alts they might have, I guess. And they want it to be more unique than just some forgettable RP name. It's
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know. I'm happy to be the sort of odd one out there because I want my character to have an identity, whereas I want them to feel like that character lived in that world prior to me coming along and controlling it. Now, I don't RP. I am not an RPer in the slightest. But that's the one little drop of immersion that I want, where I just want them to have a Warcraft universe name where I think that they had a life, and then I came along and started controlling them and took them through this world. And that's kind of where I stop with the RP, you know, nature of how I play the game. But, you know, it's funny because people might think, oh, I wonder what the name is that Josh is thinking of. I can assure you, obviously, as I just said, it's not going to be something like, you know, Countdown or, you know, I was Aussie Boy in the beta. Like, I don't really like those kinds of names. I mean, people might go with Countdown and try to pass themselves off as me. I don't know. I don't care. But, you know, I can't.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I should ask, how are you going to feel if you don't get your name?
Well, I'll put it this way. The Reddit community is polarizing, to say the least. So for every one person out there that wants to steal my name, I have a supporter that's trying to reserve it on my behalf. I've gotten a bunch of inbox messages saying, like, don't worry, Thex, like, me and my friends, we're going to try to reserve your name for you. Like, we'll message you if we get it. Don't worry about it if you don't get it. You know, you have supporters out there, which is really cool. It's a cool feeling.
That is really cool. And I had seen those posts as well, people genuinely imploring, like, hey, let's band together and actually get Thex his name, which I would like to see happen. So we'll have to keep tabs on that and see if you do wind up getting your name. Shoot me a message and let me know. I'm sure we'll see it on the Reddit or something.
Oh yeah, there will be an announcement for sure.
Very good. Now, mate, let's talk about the name reservation day in general. August 13th is that day. That's North American time. I'm thinking for us Aussies, it's a little bit different. I'll have to double check that. Everyone, don't take my word for it. If you're in Australia or anything, go and actually look that one up. But, you know, people have to be subscribed, I believe, is the understanding. And you can reserve up to 3 names. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's right. You got it right, yeah.
All right. So what are you going to do? Are you going to jump on 3? It's going to be like Thex, Drex, and Mex, or what are we talking?
No, I think at this point I'm obligated to take the shotgun approach. I'm pretty sure I have to try to get my name on 3 different realms. So, you know, as soon as I get Thex, if I get Thex on one, then, you know, that might be my realm. But either way, I kind of want to diversify a little bit, because there's a lot of, I'm not going to say any names, but there are some personalities out there that I would like to avoid. And so I might try the shotgun approach, and then, you know, wait for a couple of weeks to go by, see how the realm is turning out, and just go with whichever one feels best, I guess.
What's the stereotypical WoW name that you've seen the most that kind of gives you this, not the shits, but you kind of go like, another one of those?
Oh, I said it earlier. Holy cow, the Tauren Paladin from anyone that plays retail has probably seen every single iteration of that name.
Absolutely. It's funny because I remember I created a Tauren a while back, and, you know, you come up with the cow pun and you think you're being so crafty and unique.
We're all the same.
Yeah,
we're all the same.
And it's all been done before. Absolutely. Well, look, Thex, mate, thanks so much for dropping by the show and having a chat about this. You know, it is just a shame that, you know, you happen to call your character the same name as my character, but, you know, well, that's okay, mate. I forgive you. We'll battle it out over Thex. But, you know, from me, from me, Thex, to you, Thex, thank you so much for coming on the show.
To all those Thexes out there, stay Thexy, okay?
Mate, thanks so much again, and we'll keep tabs of how your journey for that name goes.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, truly. I'm sure we'll communicate in the future a little bit.
All right, it's time for another countdown to Classic Call, and we have the first of a fun new segment that I'll be doing in the lead up to launch. I figured we should revisit all of the classes and give people a little bit of extra food for thought if they are still struggling with their decision of what class they want to roll for World of Warcraft Classic. Now, this is going to be a touching on all the fun parts of the classes, as my cat meows in the background, and Keftenk is going to fucking kill me for that, but I'm going through all the bad things about the classes as well. We're going to have a bit of fun, talk about the good, the bad. We're not going to pull any punches, but we are going to also celebrate the classes for what they can do well. Let's talk about, first and foremost, Druids. And I've got 2 legends on the line who have been on the show before. Let's start with Taladril. People heard you last week. How are you, man?
I'm great. Glad to be back.
Always good to have you back. And it's been a long time since I've had this person back. And I've been told that if they hear one cat meow during this fucking call, they are out of here. And I've already started with cat meows in the background, so that's a good start. Let's see if he's still here. Keftenk, what's going on?
It's going.
I legit thought he left. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Now, look, guys, we're going to do equal time on the good, the bad, and the ugly about Druids. So let's start with the bad, maybe, and then we'll go to the good. Oh, do you reckon? I think that's an all right way to do it. Let's end on a positive note. So, if we have to talk about the bad with Druids that people might be considering, you know, everyone's going to knee-jerk and go like, obviously, let's talk about boomkins. That's where it all starts, blah, blah, blah. Feral DPS, it's shit. That's where, you know, and there's obviously work that you guys have done to try to dispel some of these, you know, thoughts that have been going around about what the Druid class can and can't do as well. So, Taladril, let's start with you, mate. If you had to start with, you know, what might give people pause about rolling this class, do you yourself still bring up those go-to points first, or do you start to talk about something else that people might not be aware of?
No, pretty much that. Like the bottom line to me, I guess, of the negative of Druids, and for others, it's the positive. So you just sort of need to take your own mentality in that is it's the underdog class. So do you enjoy playing the underdog, or do you just not want to waste your time with that? That's really the bottom line to me.
All right, and when you talk about, and you'll hear all of my pets going nuts in the background, guys. Apologies for the sound of the recording. You'll hear my dog Doug panting, but anyway, I've just got to put up with it because I'm on pet babysitting duty today. But when we talk about the negatives, what's if you had to explain, let's start with Boomkins, guys. If you had to explain the issues with Boomkins, does it strictly revolve around just going or is it a lot deeper than that?
The problem with Boomkin, it's deeper. There is really no issue with mana in 2019. So it's more so with the utility and the tools setup that the spec has versus, what a warrior has or what a mage has.
Now, Keftenk, I've actually seen you bring up on Discord a fair bit lately, and you've been dinging me as well about some of this stuff, but you talked about mana's not an issue in 2019, and I just quickly want to go off on that tangent because you started talking about your distaste for people's obsession with MP5, I think it was. What's your point on mana these days and how it's managed?
So mana is very different than what it was in 2006. It's managed completely different. The meta has evolved in a completely different way than what the 2006 meta is. And it devalues MP5 as a overall stat for casters. There is some, I would argue, slight uses for a healer. But, I mean, unless you're super casual, super social, you're not going into raids with even raid buffs or any type of consumable, mana is not an issue. You are only going to encounter a handful of fights in all of Classic where you're going to be starved for that mana. So I don't know. It's just like when people bring it up, it's absurd because downranking is always going to be the more efficient form of returning your mana than stacking MP5.
Taladril, you'd agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. It makes total sense, really. Like if you have enough mana to get through the fight, which we can see how short fights are these days with how we can optimize. Any MP5 is lost because all it does is add mana, and if you want more damage, you just want more spell power, and more mana doesn't change that because if you're not going then it's a useless stat.
Well, in hearing that, and again, I'll appreciate the people who might be saying, oh, Josh, you're talking with hardcore players. Of course fights don't go long for them. They're really good at the game. What about us casuals? Well, I mean, I'll get the guys to address that in their answers as well. But the thing that I'm thinking straight away, guys, when I hear you say stuff like that about mana is, I want to say, oh, well, it sounds like you've answered the problem with Boomkins because people, joke about Oomkins. They're always sort of running out of mana. Well, if fights aren't going that long, hey, now my Boomkin is a lot more viable, right? Or wrong, Taladril?
Well, I mean, it's not saying that these stats are completely worthless. Like, mana is good, mana is important. It's always good to have it. But in terms of actually itemizing your gear, that's just not what we need to focus on. That's really sort of Keftenk's point, because like nobody's going to turn down like Blessing of Wisdom or something like that. Like it's always good, but that's not part of the equation when you're looking at it for gear.
Here's the thing. It does not matter if you're hardcore or a piece of shit. Like if you are in a really bad pug or a bad guild that takes 5 minutes to kill a Magmadar, it is still more efficient for you, even if you don't understand it, to downrank than to stack MP5. MP5 is garbage. It is one of the lowest priority stats in the entire game for a caster type. You just want to downrank. And in terms of balanced Druid, rank 1 Starfire is insanely efficient for that. I mean, it costs no mana. It's still, it's above the level 20 penalty for its coefficient, so you're still getting the full benefit from your spell power damage.
So outside of the mana issues, anything else that you guys want to finish up on before we get to Feral about Boomkin and why people should be wary if they're like, Boomkin are awesome, like, my spells hit really hard, or is there anything you want to say about that?
It's an imperfect spec. It has not been developed. I mean, you can tell from just the talents. Even the form itself does not follow the logic or the trend of bear or even cat form. It was just kind of put together when they did the rehaul. I mean, even in TBC, it's kind of still all over the place, which is fine. So if you're going to be rolling a balanced Druid, you need to understand that you are going to be at a severe disadvantage if your goal is to be at the top of a DPS meter or whatnot, and your Moonkin aura is not going to make up for that. So why play a balanced Druid? That's the question.
All right. Now, Taladril, I'll throw it over to you because people might be listening going, Josh, we knew about Moonkins. It's fine. Nobody here wanted to play a Boomkin. That's such a minority. I'm going to be rolling Feral, so what do I care about what Druids can't do with Boomkins? Well, now let's touch on some things that people might need to take into consideration with Ferals, because we've heard about the DPS issues, and, you and other people on the show have talked about, like, hey, baby, guess who's going to be running Gnomeregan a lot? And, is there more to take into account for people who might want to go the feral route?
Well, it's definitely a different kind of situation whether you're talking about feral DPS or feral tanking. Feral DPS, the negative is definitely you have to spend a ton of time in Gnomeregan. If you don't, then you're not going to be competitive. And so it does require a ton of grinding and farming and lots of tryharding to do good DPS as feral. Tanking requires less effort, but then it's just trying to convince guilds that you're worth the slot, really. It's the same for DPS too.
All right, Keftenk, before you jump in, I'll jump in for the people who are screaming at the podcast right now and going, Taladril, what are you talking about? I don't have to run Gnomeregan all the time. I'm not a min-maxer. I'm going to be perfectly fine just, with my regular gear and trying to do what I can with my DPS. Well, Keftenk, why is it that people might still be concerned whether they're tanking or whether they're going cat if they're not going and min-maxing with what their class can do as a feral?
I mean, even the casuals min-max. If they look at a BIS list that is min-maxing, they're just, circumnavigating them doing their own work on that front. So not to put in the effort is kind of, I mean, you have to be, consistent and valuable to 39 other raid members. If you want to be a cat DPS and you don't want to sit in Gnomeregan, you're just not going to perform very well, and you may find yourself at the bottom of a loot council or even on a bench for raiding.
What about farming and leveling in general, Taladril? Because obviously, and it sucks to start off on the negatives because people might be going like, this sounds terrible. Why the fuck would I roll a Druid? But if we're let's say we're on our way to 60 or at 60, we're not raiding, we're just mucking around and farming and doing certain things, maybe some PvP and whatnot outside of raid times. If you're, again, a more casual player, maybe part of a casual guild, are they in their, feral form, again, whether it's bear or cat, are they going to be perfectly fine grinding mobs for gold, or is it something that still somewhat struggles a little bit just in terms of efficiency there, or it's by the by?
Druid's okay. They're not great for just grinding single mobs. Feral does better than others for that purpose. But they do really well if you're looking for like doing dungeon groups, because people are always looking for tanks, and getting a 5-man together as a feral tank is super easy, and you can do that even if you're in DPS spec. You just have to be willing to do it. So that's a bit of a plus, but they are slower on the 1v1 kind of grind at 60. They're good levelers, but slow grinders.
All right. Guys, let's go over to Resto for a second, because this is something that I've actually started thinking about a bit more recently, and I know you guys might not be the go-to authorities on Resto, but I'm sure you'll be able to talk about it a little bit. Now, I have been considering rolling a third character with Patricia as she levels and plays the game for the first time. And I know a lot of people are rolling their eyes going like, oh, fuck, Josh, you're so screwed. You're spreading yourself too thin. You've got too many characters. But yeah, I've got a Shadow Priest. I've got a Warlock as my 1A, 1B characters. But I've got to pick this third character to level with Patricia. Now, I've been tossing up between Hunter and Druid. And what you say here might sway me, because I sort of wanted to go the Resto Druid route. But what are the problems with Resto Druid, perhaps, that you might experience leveling through 5-man dungeons, mid-tier content, and then in the raiding scene? Because people often say, and we've said it before on the show, as far as healers goes, you probably want to be comfortable with the fact that you won't be the best healer in the game. Is that still the case for you guys?
It's a trick question. You don't level as Resto. You level as Feral.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I mean more if I were to heal as a Resto, is it like, the Shadow Priest, who's like, you're perfectly fine healing as a Shadow Priest through the content up until about the 50s. Is it the same for a Druid, where it's like, if you're Feral, you're perfectly fine healing a dungeon?
Yeah, but you'll probably be tanking anyway, because it's harder to get tanks.
Fair enough.
The best benefit of a Druid while leveling is your versatility. You can do any job, and you're completely fine doing it. And Classic is going to be... we know Classic's nerfed compared to private servers in terms of dungeons and the damage that you receive and the damage that you're putting out on or mobs in their health pools. So it's just going to be easy mode for any Druid that wants to be flexible.
When you say, just out of interest, and I don't want to open a whole can of worms there, Keftenk, but when you say nerfed, do you mean just obviously it's some private servers dialed it up to 11 a little bit in terms of the numbers, but now some people call it a nerf when it's actually the numbers as they were back in the day, so it feels like
sure. Yeah, in comparison to the Nostarius core specifically,
sure.
Classic does less damage.
Got it. Now, you guys have obviously raided with Resto Druids. Tell me about any complaints that you might have, if any, about the way in which they go about their role.
They just have a harder time. It takes a little bit more of an advanced healing technique to do a good job. You have to be a bit more predictive for healing rather than just reactive. Most healers are reactive because they just say, oh, look, somebody's health bar went down, let me heal them. That's pretty much reactive healing. And so Druids are really slow healers. Comparatively slow but efficient, and so it doesn't really fit that style. You have to be a bit more expecting, like you'll start healing somebody before they take damage, and then they take it, and then your really efficient heal hits them, and it's really effective in that way.
I would say for Resto Druids, I think between Taladril and I, we both have raided as Resto Druids. I raided at a high level on Nostarius as a Resto Druid, but the more Resto Druids you have in a raid, the more assuming you're like a regrowth spec, the more diminished your value becomes, because obviously HOTS do not stack in Classic / Vanilla. So I would say that would maybe be the call out for Resto Druids. But healing touch is very efficient, especially when you downrank it to rank 3, rank 4, even rank 2 sometimes.
All right, guys, as we start to move towards the positive, I'll give you one last say on the negatives of Druid. Have a bit of fun here. You've got your platform. What's the one thing you've always wanted to bitch about with Druids? Taladril, I'll start with you, and we'll let Keftenk cook up what might be a rather extrapolated answer. Go for it, Taladril.
So like in the negative or the positive?
Sorry, your final negative point about one thing that's always given you the shits about Druids.
Oh... The amount of eye rolling I have to do constantly when people say how bad Druids are in every single aspect of the game.
Fuck the community.
People do fine all the time. Yeah, it's just like, okay, I'm done with this.
So your issue is mainly more the defense of the class that you have to do by rolling one.
Yeah, constantly.
Justifying yourself. All right, Keftenk, how about you? What about anything with the gameplay that you've always wanted to whinge about?
Oh yeah, we're not a warrior. There's literally zero reason to ever roll a Resto Druid and have them in a raid if you want to, look at the game optimally. Like, we just don't have a raiding spot. We can be replaced 100%.
All right, fair enough. Well, look, guys.
I mean
go for it.
Shouldn't be how a game is developed, but that is sadly how I am hoping deep down inside that the meta goes that way. I want to see this game burn.
Yeah. I mean, okay. You want to see it burn. What, you want the meta to go down in flames?
I want the meta to just,
Yep.
You see these tweets from Ian like, oh my God, Hurricane is so amazing. Druids are going to be the best class in Classic, and you guys don't even know. And it's just like, do you understand that the meta is strictly warrior, warlock, and then your paladin/shamans? Like, it's.
What about
I don't
Mage
think people
Ignites?
have a clue.
Come on, Mage Ignites.
Oh yeah, Captain Planet. Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, I mean, it's a good point to raise, and obviously, I don't want people to think it's all doom and gloom in terms of like, oh, I just got told basically I won't be able to raid. Well, no, certain guilds will still take you. It's just Keftenk's pointed out, obviously, that you are
right.
you're replaceable.
We're speaking like the 1%.
Yeah.
You know, even.
You.
Oh, I'm speaking to 1%. Yeah, sure. I mean,
Keftenk is the 1%.
I've done all this work for this stupid spec that is pathetic and worthless, and yet I still advocate play what you want to play, but you need to understand the game that you're playing too.
Yeah, and that's all right. A bit of self-flagellation is all good, mate. But look, guys, let's get on to the positives. Let's flip it on its head and go, all right, we've done that side of things now. Let's talk about why Druids can be fucking awesome. Taladril. Let's go through it again. Now, we heaped a bit of shit on balance, but let's talk about some of the positives. If someone did want to go, look, I'm going to try and get the most out of a balanced Druid. I reckon boomkins look really cool. Watch this. What can they have to look forward to?
Their dance is pretty sweet.
Seriously, that's the point you make?
No, I mean, this balance is the same with any other spec for Druid. It's fun to be a little bit different. It's fun to be a little bit more fringe, a little bit more edge. Maybe you're looking at gear differently than other people, so the junk that other people see as junk, you can see it as something cool, and that's fun because there's less competition, and just you get some head turns when people see you actually raiding like that.
Keftenk?
I would say the call out for balance, like why to play one, would not even be to play Moonkin, and it's not even PvE related, but it'd be for PvP because the standard spec, the go-to spec is deep. It's deep balance, but you're mixing it either with resto talents or even feral talents, depending on your choice. It's an amazing world PvP spec, and so that would be my call out. I mean, in terms of PvE, it's just like you got that dance, I guess. No, okay, so seriously, how I was utilized on Nostarius was the hybrid playstyle, which I think everyone wanted in Classic, or Vanilla rather. Everyone wanted it in TBC, but either Blizzard or the meta did not allow for that. And I think it's still very niche and it's pretty rare, but balance, it works very well in that role. If you can get into a raid team that will utilize you in that form. So I healed on trash and then DPS on bosses, and so we cut our healing team down, and we tried to optimize and maximize our raid team that way.
But you weren't actually Moonkin when doing that, right? You were just simply 30 points in balance?
I did have 31 points. Moonkin.
Oh, you did have 31. Okay.
All right, guys. Now let's move on to Feral and talk about something that I think does get brought up a lot as one of the more fun specs to play in the game. Now, albeit that the damage output might not be as great as others, it does have, certain limitations, which we've covered a lot on the podcast before. You guys touched on it again just earlier. But I feel like Feral Druids it's something that a lot of people actually want to do. They find it quite fun, and I've always been intrigued as to why. I actually dabbled with a druid for the first time in ages the other day, and I have shat on them for so long just because I say, it's not really appealing to me. I don't want to be in a shape-shifting form. I want to see my character. I want to see the gear, so druids don't appeal to me. But I mucked around with one, and I must say, I actually had a fair bit of fun. But we'll start with you, Taladril, and this is a spec that's near and dear to your heart. Why do you have such a blast playing Feral?
Oh, Feral is, I don't know, it's fun to do stuff differently, and there's, like, from a tanking perspective, Feral is actually really easy from a rotation. So, like, it's pretty challenging to do their proper rotation as warrior comparatively. Feral is very much like one button style, so you can focus on a lot of other stuff because tanking is pretty heads up.
That appeals to me.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. Now, Feral DPS is actually the most complex rotation in the game, like by far.
I didn't know
so it is really, I would imagine, very exciting for those that are really trying to get the most out of their character when it shouldn't really have that kind of thing possible. So it might take a lot of effort and it takes a lot of skill, but by combining those two, then that can be very rewarding for those kinds of players.
Okay. Keftenk, what would you have to say about, for the more casual player maybe who has never played a Druid before and they're sitting there at the character selection screen going, fuck, do I just do it? Do I just pull the trigger on a Druid? I think cats look pretty cool, but I wonder how it'll go. Leveling as a Druid, Feral, why is it awesome?
It's the best spec. I mean, it's the most efficient, and you can. Even being a bear or a cat, you can always still shift back into caster form, heal just perfectly fine. And Wrath is actually fairly decent while leveling, so you can even DPS from a range if you need to. To Taladril's point, it is probably one of the higher skill caps. We're talking about cap form, due to all the power shifting that you need to do. I think it's going to be a bit easier in Classic due to the modern tech and the ability to macro freaking pots and stuff into your power shift macro. But that skill cap is still going to be there, and it's probably rivals that of like a melee weaving hunter, or even Mage is pretty high skill capped if you really utilize, Arcane Blast and Flame Strike and whatnot, and Cone of Cold. So it's up there for sure.
All right.
It's very rewarding when you can make it work and you can perform well while doing something like that.
Okay. Now, let's touch on a couple of the positives quickly for Resto. Now, we just said, before Keftenk touched on it, saying, look, they're pretty replaceable. There's healers that can do better jobs, so why would you take a Resto Druid if you're into the min-maxi style? But, they are also talked about as, and you guys pointed this out, being incredibly efficient, and their HOTS are regularly spoken of as being quite powerful. So, Taladril, what is the awesome side of being a Resto Druid for those potential healers out there?
When a Druid tops the meters, that feels good because you're not supposed to, So when you're beating all the other healer specs, you're doing a really good job and it really stands out. So that's good. Or in the opposite side of it, in the not 1%, nobody gives you crap if you're at the bottom of the meters because you are Druid. So it's a lot lower stress level. Plus, with Druid being the least played class generally, and with only having a couple Druids in raid, you absorb gear ridiculously fast. You will be the first with tier gear every time, all the time, which is pretty fun.
That's pretty appealing, I must admit. Keftenk, anything to add to that?
I would just say that Resto Druid is very competitive if you can play it right. Regrowth spec was not in the meta in vanilla, and that is very much so in the meta in Classic, and it probably you can still even regrowth spec in like AQ, but around AQ you start wanting to be more efficient because fights just in general do go longer, so you do switch it up. Here's Druid in a nutshell. Yeah. That we didn't cover. Fairy Fire. It's optimal debuff. It can be replaced by a rogue, but generally you want it. So go Feral, because that's going to be the optimal spec. Innervate, it's for you. Fuck everyone else. Battle Resurrection, it is not good utility. Don't try to defend it. And then Leader of the Pack and Moon Kinora, they're okay. It's an added bonus, but why the fuck would you want that? I mean, if you're going to have that Feral Bear Druid, he better be using Fairy Fire, and then Leader of the Pack is just added. So that's Druid in a nutshell.
All right.
It's not Warrior. Play Warrior.
Taladril, keep it running. Why are Druids so awesome, and why should everyone play one?
Druids are awesome because you can do anything with one class. They are the non-alt running people's dream because you can play anything at the drop of a hat or just with a quick respec. They're fun for people who like to collect a bunch of gear because there's a bunch of stuff to collect that gives you different options in different situations. You can do stealth, you can solo, you can tank, you can heal, you can do DPS. It's the everything class.
Very
Let's
good.
not forget about Warsong Gulch, right?
Of
There's
course,
an
of
amazing
course, throw it in.
carrier.
Yeah, flag running.
Even farming dungeons solo, like you can solo Moradin very easily, make some money, make some coin. You can do Dire Maul North, Dire Maul East. Like, they're very self-sufficient, and they can, a hunter is absolutely going to be better in those regards, but if you want to be doing like all sorts of things, you can still farm very efficiently and very competitively.
Yeah, you can go farming for herbs or mining in travel form with PvP gear, and you're literally running at 60% mount, actually faster than 60% mount. So it's amazing. You don't have to dismount at all, just run around and get herbs.
Very good, guys. Well, look, that's Druids, everyone. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hopefully that helped some of you make your mind up with that class, and we'll get more and more of them coming on the show as we tear through each and every class. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Keftenk, you were such a trooper getting through all those sound effects going off in my cats.
You're a piece of shit.
I know, I deserve it. I am a piece of shit. And Taladril, thanks so much, mate.
Thanks.
I'll speak
Go
to you
figure
guys
a
later.
shadow priest. Has
I know.
all these things going for him.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Hi everyone, Josh here. I just want to take a quick moment to remind you that while Countdown to Classic will always be a podcast you can get for free, if you do happen to really enjoy the show and find yourself always coming back for more, then please do check out the show's Patreon page to see how you can help keep the lights on at Countdown to Classic, and even vote on show content as the show continues to bring you more and more classic WoW goodness. Alternatively, if monthly subscriptions aren't your thing, you can always visit the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi, with that link being in the show notes and on the website too. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic class breakdown, the next segment in why your class rocks and why your class sucks. So for all of you sitting around at the character creation screen, wondering what to roll, freaking out because now you have to finally make that big decision, let's talk about warriors. And this is one that gets the fiery, passionate players. We've got a few returnees here. Docken, what is good, my man?
How are you doing, Josh? It's excellent to be back. Always enjoy the show, and look forward to the new ones when they come out.
Mate, great to have you back. And Niel, who was with you last time as well. It's a reunion tour. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm very excited to talk about the best fucking class in class. Warriors, right?
Of course you mean warriors, right?
Warriors come out to play. Now, Saturn, you weren't in on the last one, but you're joining us now. The GM of the Countdown Horde Guild North America, Saturnalia. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. I'm so pumped to play a Warrior Classic, and I'm just so ready just to open up that character screen and start making my character.
Very good. Well, look, guys, I appreciate that you're all very, very excitable warrior players, and we're going to get to all the good stuff, but as we're going to be doing with these segments, not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but we are going to start with the warts when we talk about warts and all. So let's give people a little bit of pause if they are wondering if they're tossing up between a warrior and something else. This might be the thing that pushes them to the other class that they're choosing. Now, Docken, I'll start with you, and we'll go through all the specs as well, but just in general, if you had to bitch about warriors a little bit, what is it that you guys can't do that you wish you could?
That's I don't know. I mean, I guess honestly, the biggest thing that I gripes me, and it's in PvP. I'm not a very good PvPer, and I've heard you discuss about your PvP capabilities and stuff in the past. And my biggest thing is like I feel like my mobility is doo-doo. But you can overcome that if you use free action potions. But maybe I'm just a cheap bastard, and I'm like, I want to spend like 3 gold every time I got to fight somebody just to win, and that would be a gripe. And then I would also complain a little bit about the repair costs. So when you're like progressing on something, it can get pricey.
Very good point. It often gets it flies under the radar, the old repair costs, but definitely something to take into account. Niel, if I had to throw it to you, general gripes about warriors. Even though you love them, there's got to be some moments where you're like, oh fuck this class.
I'd say there's two. Like the first one, Docken mentioned the repair costs. Since you're eating so much of the damage, like your repair costs are usually higher than everyone else. And the other thing would be that I would like to kick ass at fresh 60, but when I get fresh 60 and I'm in my greens, some blues, I'll just get my ass fucking kicked until I get some decent gear. So yeah, that would be my second gripe with it. All
right, and Saturn, your turn to. Oh, sorry, someone's going to jump in.
Oh, I was just going to say, adverse to that, though, once you ramp up, you start to stomp faces once you get the gear.
Fair enough. Saturn, what about you, mate? Are you someone who, in quiet moments of contemplation, likes to whinge a little bit about warriors in quiet corners of the internet, or never?
I'm going to piggyback on what Docken said about movement speed. When you level, movement speed's like a huge factor on how fast you level, and you don't really realize it until you like sit down and chart out how long you take to get from point A to point B, and that you don't have any movement speed increase other than like charge or intercept, which has a limited use for traveling until you're 40, is such a downer.
All right. Now, guys, let's go through the specs real quick. Let's start with protection, maybe an easier one, because there might not be too many negatives, but you guys will definitely know, because I can't think of any off the top of my head, and I think that's obviously a good thing for warriors when I sit here and I think of, protection, arms, fury. I really can't think of the specific negatives. More with protection, I'm like, everyone sits there and sings the praises of warrior tanks. Oh my god, if you're going to be a tank in World of Warcraft Classic, you only roll warrior. Surely there's something that is maybe not so crash hot. One small little nuance with this spec. Docken, what do you reckon?
Playing prot is something that it's great for like if you're going to be using a shield slam impale build, something like that. It's a solid build early on when you're raiding like MC BWL, depending on how threat caps work, and some of that'll be seen whenever we get into the actual classic game, depending on how the some of the parry and things work, but we don't get into that too much. But the thing is your damage is doo-doo. Like trying to like go farm stuff or like grind mobs or something, like don't level prot. That'd be so dumb. And once you get to the top end, if you're out there just like, oh, I'm gonna go grind some mobs and get some like wolf steaks or something else, like dude, it's gonna take forever.
Niel, anything you want to sound off with prot?
Yeah, I'd say like weirdly, I think prod is like the weakest. Like deep prod is the weakest tree of the warrior, because like arms has so many good things down the tree, fury as well. But the more you go down prod, the less goodies, really like shiny goodies you get. I mean, you have shield slam, right? But I don't know. You get 50 points, you get defiance, and it kind of stops being good after that. Okay.
Saturn, let me throw a couple of negatives that we haven't mentioned yet that might help you go off on these tangents, as well as whatever other points you may have of your own. But I'm just thinking, if I had to sort of talk to someone who didn't have much experience with warriors and they were saying, why should I not roll a warrior, or more specifically a protection warrior, I'd be thinking, well, I know people talk about the tank shortage, but are there still going to be other protection warriors out there that you're fighting for gear? Is gearing a protection warrior tough? Or you might say, well, no, if you're the good protection warrior, you're the one that they gear first. The other thing I think of is AoE abilities. Like you guys, as far as I know, don't get, people talk about the paladin tank and, oh man, they're so good with the consecrate or whatever and the AoE. And please guys correct me if I'm wrong here, because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But, you guys just have your single target taunts and stuff. Is that something that you'd wish you could get?
Like for me, if I had to tell anybody what I would shy away from rolling a warrior, is like, it's really a leadership role, because people are looking you to tank and also lead them through the dungeon, because you're the one who's it's just automatically assumed that the pulls, the boss strats, like how to lead the group through the instance, and like, you know, dodge, that includes like dodging patrols, you know, knowing what boss abilities people need to watch out for. Like if you're not that really type of person, I can't really recommend warrior, because like even when you're DPS, you're still tanking 5-mans and pre-raid content. You know, your upper Blackrock Spires, doing your Ani attunements on the Horde side. Like you're the one tanking for all that stuff. So you're still exposed to it even when you're in a DPS role.
It's a great point, which is why I could never tank. Like, I just do not know some instances like the back of my hand, and I don't know the pools and where you're supposed to go. So, you know, the more casual player I mean, not to dissuade casuals or new players from trying out a tank. I mean, you only fucking learn by doing it. But I just know that for me, it does turn me off personally, because I'm like, that's a bit too much pressure on me. But let's move on, guys. Let's talk about arms, Docken, and not the ones attached to your body. Let's talk about arms. Warrior, what do you think is a little bit limiting with them?
I'm honestly, I'm gonna not even 100% sure. The only times I played arms like when leveling, and then basically like after leveling, I switched to whatever tanking build I'm gonna use. As far as like a deficiency with them, I guess you wouldn't. That was something you wouldn't want to be using for raiding. Like, I mean, you're not going to be having people like popping up like Mortal Strike and stuff, taking up debuff slots, that kind of thing. That's some more end game though. But I'm not. I don't got a whole lot for you there.
That's all right, Niel. You spent a bit of time with arms, haven't you?
Yeah, some leveling, some PvP. It's obviously very good for PvP and the best tree to level in my opinion. But the downside though, it's hard, man, because I gotta say, warrior is pretty sweet, right? Right, guys?
Absolutely. I mean, you could dominate people while leveling, even like somebody jumps you and turn around and get a mortal strike on their face, or you got your sweeping strikes up and just blam, you lay them out. Well, I guess maybe one thing to think about there too when you're saying this, like making sure you have a proper weapon. That could be a challenge when doing it up until you get your Whirlwind Axe.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned that yet, and that might be another negative to go into in terms of, you know, it's obvious that being so gear dependent, leveling a warrior can be a bit of a challenge. And, you know, people talk about the leveling speed and everything. It's like, get used to that. If you're not going to be, obviously, people save their cash, they don't buy stuff off the auction house, then warrior is going to be a bit painful at times. Is that right, Saturn?
Yeah, it is. Like, and that's one of the weaknesses of arms spec when you go those weapon specs. I'm talking about axe spec, sword spec, and the polearm and mace specs, but because then you don't have as much weapon flexibility as you could if you didn't have those. Because, like, you know, you take axe specs, that's 5 talent points that if you switch to a non-axe weapon, you're just not utilizing. And then you look at like the progression, like level 29 to 42, you have like kind of a plethora of axes. You have 5 different ones across both factions. And then ultimate, you have 3 non-axe weapons, and that's really when the real drought comes in, because if you're non-alliance, you can't get Bonebiter, and then like if you didn't get Bonebiter, you're stuck with Corpse Maker until you get Ravager or something from SM.
Well, just to go on from there, because it's being raised in Twitch chat now, and either yourself, Saturn, or maybe Niel, you'll have something on this. But Mike is talking about, you know, with arms, he always felt that you'd get pigeonholed in, and Saturn, you kind of touched on this just then, pigeonholed into certain weapon types with arms, and swords just seem to be the king. And if you don't go swords, then you might be, you know, just wasting your talent points as splicers or mace adds as well. Is that pretty much the case?
Well, you pretty much have a choice, right? While you're leveling, you could always skip the weapon specialization talents and just, you know, spend those points elsewhere and just pick the weapon. But then again, if you play Orc, axes are 100% better. So you should be using an axe. So
yeah, for me,
I would argue axes are better for everybody, because just the top end damage, and then you're getting the crit from the axe, and then you go over to your fury tree and you get your extra crit over there, and you can get massive amounts of crit while leveling without having any plus crit gear.
Yeah, I was going to recommend axe just because the PvP component, you got to think in a PvP scenario, you're not going to have a lot of uptime on your opponent. So like that crit can mean the difference between you living and you dying, and that's going to save you more time than any other talent. Right? Because a walk back is so much time wasted, and then you gotta, you know, get yourself to full, rebuff yourself if you have scrolls and food buffs.
Yeah, but then again, if you're pigeonholed into having a shitty axe because that's the only one you have, you can't. I feel like it's a split, right? Because you spend those 5 points for an axe, but if you can't take advantage of the loot you get, it's.
Yeah, and that might not be the case as much in Classic because apparently EXP from dungeons is a lot more. So you might be more inclined to run those dungeons more often to get that weapon than you would be on private servers like Lighthopes Core.
That's true.
And I would say that there's probably some accuracy to that, but at the same time, if you were stuck with, like a lower level axe, and you got something much stronger in a different weapon type, that you still might just put that in for a couple levels if you had to until you get up there until you can again get your whirlwind, because everybody can get the whirlwind axe.
Guys, if we move on to Fury, and an interesting point just before we start to talk about the couple of negatives about Fury. Niel and Docken, you were here last time we talked about Warriors in depth on the show, and it's funny because it's still one of the segments that, such a little thing we discussed was I put to you guys, hey, leveling, do you go arms or Fury? And that conversation got a lot of comments with people agreeing and disagreeing, and the community still seems relatively split on whether arms or Fury is the best spec to level with. So I appreciate that people have different points of view on that one, but we'll talk about Fury now. And if there are negatives, Docken, that you had to go, again, people talk about some of the best specs in game, and oh my god, Fury Warriors, boners out for that one. Tell me why there might be something that it does lack, if anything.
When you're leveling and stuff like that, you're looking at it, if that's the approach you're taking with it, is that you're not going to be dual wielding. You're going to have to go two hands, so you're not going to get any of that like extra damage or the extra like flurry procs from like an offhand and that kind of situation, because you're going to have a higher miss rate and all that stuff. You're not going to have hit gear until, have a higher chance to miss. You're not going to have hit gear until you get leveled up a bit. But end game 100% dominates for DPS, damage output, that kind of thing. I think one thing I'm curious to see too when Classic drops is how Slam works. I know in like the private servers, a lot of people are like, oh, Slam can be really good if you're using like two-hand Fury Slam build, and that latency was a problem in being able to function with that, and that's why people didn't know that as well. But the biggest thing being is like trying to level using Fury, I think would be a downfall, simply because of you're going to have to go two-hand. You're not going to be able to use the benefit of like the offhand damage and getting the extra flurry procs. And your crit probably is not going to be high enough to utilize that fully.
Okay. Niel, Saturn, anything to piggyback off of that?
Not much to add. In my opinion, it's the lesser leveling spec. You could make it work technically with spell batching. You could have the sit and rage thing work. It's tricky. Like you could pull it off, but yeah, I wouldn't pick on a gimmick thing that you can't pull off. I'd say the big downside of Fury is the leveling part, because aside from that, it's big dick, right?
Yeah, like for me, it's just so abysmal in the world PvP scenario compared to the arms build that I only play PvP, so like I just feel like I can't do anything, even more like less so than normal, which Warriors already pretty gimped in world PvP before they get gear in 60.
Okay.
And then there's like dual wield and two hand. When you're going to start dual wield, you might have wing blade and outlaw saber, but you're not going to have a lot of offhand damage until you get those points into dual wield specialization.
All right. Now, guys, I feel like that's pretty much going to be all the negatives we have to say about Warriors. So how about I let you maniacs run free now? Docken, I'm almost hesitant to unleash you here. Tell me why Warriors are awesome.
If you got to ask, that's your first mistake right there. There's almost nothing that's not awesome about them. You can tank, you can DPS, you can PvP. You dominate the battlefield as long as you have a healer. And the biggest thing to me, and I've said this time and time again, is I am a huge fan of doing like the PvE content and raiding and 5-mans, and it gives you that leadership position to get in there and have an impact in the fight and just like kick ass and take names. And I'm sure these other gentlemen here can jump right on that same train.
Like the thing with me with Warriors that I love the most is the way Warriors scale with gear. Every single piece or an upgrade that you get, you feel it, whether you're tanking or PvPing or DPSing, like you just fucking feel it. It's such a rush.
Yeah, I really like warriors because of the protection role where you're the tank and you can like guide people through the instance. You can show new people like how to get through something, and they can show other, and you can just like really form like a good community around yourself if you like helping people out. Because as a warrior, you're going to be getting whispers all the time to do dungeons. Like people are just going to slash you warrior in the level range and just whisper anybody they can to get that tank for their spot. Because most of the time, a group is looking for that tank because it's just so hard to get somebody to do that.
I mean, I'm hearing in Twitch chat from Trigontor the following, and this really did make me laugh. I mean, it goes without saying, obviously, best tank, best DPS. If they only let us heal, we'd probably be the best healer. So, I mean, and he's also throwing in that we can bandage with the best of them. I mean, we do bring that up often, that yes, okay, you are the best tanks by a country mile. And, you know, the private server meta, which we understand is not the same as Classic's going to be and was different from Vanilla, was that the DPS was easily number one as well by a fair margin. Now, let's say that gets brought down a little bit, and we've already talked about this a bit on the show. It's still going to be the case, evidently, that warrior DPS and, you know, will probably go unchallenged. So, guys, let's talk about that. If we maybe just talk about what your expectations are for the DPS difference between private servers and Classic, and it's still going to be like day and night between number 1 and number 2.
For me, I just like the only thing that I think would be limiting would be the threat component with the increased parry. I mean, the crit suppression, that affects everybody, and we don't really know how much it affects casters. So when I say everybody, I mean melee, and that's just because we have a lack of casting data from the beta on the crit suppression.
Yeah, some of that's gonna come down to what numbers look like when we finally get there. As you said, the threat, I agree with that, man. I think the threat is going to be potentially the biggest limiting factor because tank threat generation is going to be reduced because of the parry. I think that's very accurate.
Now, Docken, I'll get you to keep going here because we'll go real quick on Prot. Tell me why everyone won't shut up about Prot warriors. Why are you the only answer that people want when they need a tank?
Well, you have the most utility as far as like what you can do, your abilities, that kind of thing. In my opinion, I mean, I know bears have some things, but you know, you've got that. You have the ability to block and parry, which they don't have, so you're going to get a greater mitigation out of that. And I mean, come on, you're a warrior, right? You just get in there and send it, and then you. I mean, those are huge factors, in my opinion. And the gearing is kind of weird for bears, and I think there's actually a limited number of people that play bear tanks well. So a warrior, if you're an unskilled warrior, you could do probably reasonably okay or as good as an average like bear druid, I would think. Maybe. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, like you said, I mean, like you have so many tools to deal with tanking in general, like, and it doesn't even matter if you're prot or not. Like you can tank basically like anything pre-raid as any spec, and you're going to be successful. It's just an easier time for everyone.
Yeah, and that's like one of the benefits of having a DPS warrior is like even if they weren't number 1 or theoretically number 1, however you want to phrase it, they had the ability to slap on a shield and some other pieces of gear and just tank almost anything with the same spec they use for DPS. All
right. Now, let's move on and we'll tear through it, guys. Let's go through the leveling process a bit. And as we said, you know, whether it's arms, whether it's fury, warriors are going to be slower during the leveling process. You might be... Well, the one question I have is, whilst everyone talks about the speed, how susceptible to dying are you, though, as a warrior? Are you for some reason, even though you're a bit tanky, you're in a spot of bother if you pull particular mobs or 2 or 3 mobs just like everyone else? How does it work?
I personally am not a fan of fighting more than 1 or 2 things at a time together. you start getting beyond that, and I feel like, and again, this is like the first time I leveled in the private server was like prod, which was completely stupid. And other times I leveled just kind of like secondary warriors on rested XP and things, so it wasn't as focused or hard push. Where you're going to be if you're maximizing your sweeping strikes and arms and that kind of stuff. But if you get beyond that, or you don't have those abilities available, you start getting multiple mobs, and you start taking more damage than you can sustain. And then the thing is, if you find yourself in trouble with you've out-quested the area of your level, and now you're trying to level on mobs or do quests that are higher than you, and you run into this, they're hitting you way more and way harder, and you are all your option is basically to hamstring kite it around, and that's really what you've got. And that'll slow you down some, but then again, with the meta being talked about of 5-man leveling being the fastest way to go now because of the experience modifier from the beta, I mean, you might be able to just chain run 5-mans and you'll be leveling just as fast that way.
The thing for me though is that all the recent warriors I've kind of leveled them on cheat mode because I have a pocket healer like all the time because my wife plays with me, and so it's been a lot easier. So warriors are usually good with the dual leveling, but for classic we're aiming to just dungeon grind like the hell out of it. So I think it's gonna go decently fast. We'll see how it goes, but I have good faith on that.
I agree with that it's going to not be as difficult. Like, I played on Northdale, and some of the casters were like machine guns. Like, they just hit you with bombs over and over and over. And then, like, also on the beta, leveling your weapon skill is faster, so you won't be subject to those glances and those misses and that increased parry chance on equal level mobs, like, right when you level.
Now, another little note there with the casters and stuff, and the way some of the mobs work and the way they function on the private servers is not always correct. So, like, you might have a mob just standing there shooting you through the side of a hill or something that it shouldn't even be able to do. So I'm hoping like some of those types of things, like those glitches where the line of sight doesn't work or things like that, where you would normally use it to your advantage to bring it closer to you, than running into it and aggroing extra mobs. Like, I'm hoping some of that stuff will work better on the actual classic game.
Now, Saturn, I meant to ask you because the guys, you mentioned pocket healers, and we joked around the other day, and I wasn't joking. I was saying, Saturn, I'll be a pocket healer one day with my priest, and we might run a battleground or run around a world PvP, and you'll have a healer in the back, sort of keeping you up. But the one question I had is, people always talk about, warriors with a pocket healer, like unstoppable. Oh my god, it's so much fun, but is it literally like you are indestructible if you are a warrior that just has that one healer with you? Like, if you come across 2 or 3 people in world PvP, is it just laughing them off, going, haha, watch this? Or is it a bit more problematic sometimes?
It's not always going to be just like face roll, depending on the skill of your opponents and their classes, and also the class of your healer. Because a lot of my experience is running with like a resto druid or a priest, so I'm used to like a dispel or someone that can CC. But really, it's you got to just protect your healer as the warrior. Like, don't just go in, dive the back line that they have, and then forget about your healer, because they need to peel too. Like, they're there to support you, but you're also there to support them and make sure they're able to help you stay up. And having said that, it is extremely noticeable when you have a healer as opposed to not in world PvP or battleground PvP.
It changes like the whole way people engage you, right? Because we've been leveling together, and what they'll do is, if they attack me first, then it's stupid because my wife will just hail me. But if they attack the priest, they have like a 2-second window, maybe like tops, where they can like do some serious damage. But once I charge them, like now they have to fight me plus the priest. So it changes the dynamic a lot, and it enables the warrior to do just so much more.
Now, guys, just to round out, if we're talking about something that some people take into account, which is your end game rotation, and, just to wrap up, we haven't talked that much about it, the positives of Arms and Fury. I'm not actually sure what the rating spec is for DPS warriors. I'm sure you guys will help me out with that one, but I have felt like I've heard that the rotation is actually a shitload of fun. I hope I'm not wrong in saying that, because I've always felt that it's somewhat... it's a lot more than just, your warlocks and mages spamming one button. It's rather nuanced and, do this, do that, reactive to this. Is that the case? Are people going to have something to look forward to with the rotation in endgame as a DPS warrior?
I can go first. Like I said earlier, once you get gear, like everything goes a lot faster. You get more rage, so you need to take decisions on how many rage you. And also, like the more gear you get, the more buttons you press, basically, because you will have a lot more rage. So it gets like progressively more rewarding as you play it and as you progress into the reading scene.
All right. Okay. Well, look, guys, let's wind up on this point. Saturn, is it join the big brains on the warriors? They have, like, warriors do it best. Warriors have the most fun. Like when people say blondes have the most fun, warriors have the most fun. Is that the case?
I think so, just because I really feel like they're a true hybrid that they can DPS and tank extremely well in vanilla. And it's kind of cheating because they're almost the best, if not the best.
Docken, I know you're waiting to just go nuts. So here's your last statement. Why should people, when they're hovering over that character selection screen, go with their gut and do the warrior?
If you want to be the champion of your team, if you want to be the greatest member of your raid group, your 5-man, you want to be the guy that steps in there and does exactly what needs to be done, saves the day, takes the big hits, places the mobs where they have to be. You want to be the guy that everybody goes, I need him to help me out. That's what you want to do, man. It's so much fun. I love it.
Very good. And Niel, I guess suffice to say, you guys have mentioned it, you'll be pretty popular.
Yeah, well, probably, if you want to be rock hard the whole time you're playing, it's pretty much the class to play, and everybody will praise you for it.
Very good.
It's gonna get hard and send it.
Yeah. Log on, get 10 whispers to do strat 5-man.
Very good, guys. All right, everyone. Well, hopefully that was some food for thought for you. Guys, thanks so much for stopping by. Please do. I forgot to do this for the Druids. I'll have to remember to plug away for them. But guys, Docken, throw yourself a quick plug, man.
Feel free to check me out on YouTube and Twitch. I do live streaming on Twitch, Docken_TV. Please join us over there. And we look forward to seeing you guys in class.
And Niel, anything to plug, mate?
Not much. I'm just a friendly French-Canadian that has a French-Canadian guild. So if you're looking to hook up, yeah.
Very good for all you French-Canadians out there. Hit Niel up. And Saturn, plug away, man.
Yeah, I've been streaming on Twitch recently under Saturnalia _, and leading NA Horde C2C. So come over if you want to play and have some.
Absolutely, Saturn. I meant to ask you, are there any, not to put you on the spot, are there any class leads or any classes that we're short on that we need to shout out to people for?
We got a good balance right now. Kind of low on rogues, but I mean that's never a bad.
So I'm not even there, and I can say you need more shaman.
That's our most populous class right now, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, I think we have 16 or 17 right now.
Nice. All right. Well, there you go. All right, everyone. Well, look, thanks so much, guys. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been fun.
Thank you.
All right, it's time for another countdown to classic class breakdown. Why your class rocks and why your class sucks. And right now we are covering the mages. And we've got two of my favorites on the line. I love these guys. I'm so glad that they're always willing to come back on the show. Let's start. It's been too long between drinks, as you know I love to say, and I mean it. Ohgee Haptix, how are you, mate?
Doing great, man. Good to see you again, Josh. It has been far too long.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you here, mate. And all of you know just how much I absolutely fawn over this next person. We talk about things like man crushes and oh my God, it's there, baby. North, how are you, man?
I say this every time I'm back on, and from the bottom of my heart, it is a pleasure to be back on Countdown to Classic, man. Thanks for having me.
Mate, my pleasure. Now, guys, let's rip straight into it. The listeners will be used to it by now. We're going through first the negatives and then the positives of the Mage class. This is directed at all those people who maybe haven't made their minds up yet, who might be sitting at the character creation screen going, I just can't make up my mind. What should I do? This might help them either, number one, pull the trigger on a mage, or number two, actually look in another direction. So, guys, not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, but let's get the negatives out of the way, and we'll start with just general points about the downside of mages. Ohgee, let's start with you, mate. Why should people maybe have a little bit of pause about rolling a mage?
I gotta be honest, mage is a phenomenal class. There are really not a lot of reasons to give to not roll a mage.
Not liking
I would
fun
say
things?
yeah. I would say the number one negative would probably be overpopulation. The most played classes are almost always going to be warrior, mage, rogue, usually in that order. So if you're somebody that wants to sort of stand out a little bit more, you're either going to need to be an amazing mage, or you might want to, look towards something else. But it's even that is hard to even put as a negative, because there's not even as much gear competition as melee has. It's a very, you sort of have to make yourself come up with that as a negative. But that's what I would say. Besides that, there are 2 or 3 mage abilities that just don't work quite as well on Classic as they did on private servers. Most of the problems with those, specifically Cone of Cold and Blizzard, have been confirmed to be Blizz-like. So I don't think they'll be changing. And those 2 abilities could be a little bit frustrating at times on the beta.
North, you'd agree with a lot of that?
Yeah, it is very frustrating to look at, look at the blizzards we have in private servers, and, how easy it is to form AoE polls, peel people off of flag carriers and Warsong Golds, really be this one-stop, shop for any kind of ridiculously powerful CC. And then you go to beta and you see people walk through a 85% slow front to back and nothing happens. So, I mean, it obviously is, that's incredibly frustrating to, see. But on the other hand, I think there's a silver lining in it, because it means that mages will now have to peel with Blizzard less. So my role will not be sitting in the back and pressing one button in PvP, as it already is kind of similarly that in PvE sometimes. So, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of, oh, hey, Blizzard and Peel. I like, I prefer the fiery specs of Mage. I prefer going in, boom, boom, with some nice crits, some nice feel-good moments. Obviously, with Cone of Cold kind of scuffed in the way that it is compared to private servers, you then have that being worse on top of it. But to be honest, I really don't think it's, you're not losing that much. It obviously is worse to have Cone not just be this insanely reliable tool that it was on private servers, but it's still amazing.
Yeah, Mage is, I don't want to make it sound like Mage isn't playable. There are definitely other classes that got sort of gutted a little bit worse by the beta than Mages did. Hunters come to mind for one. There are a lot of
Trap DR
unfortunate
with
things.
Scatter.
Yeah, very, and traps just simply not working half the time.
Yeah.
Which that's another topic. If we have time, we can sort of go down that road of, how far should no changes go. But as far as mages go, like North said, it's still an amazing class. If you've played thousands of hours of Mage on private servers like North and myself, then Cone of Cold and Blizzard will definitely frustrate you. But if you're, if you're a more casual player, or maybe Mage is a new class to you, you might not even notice the difference with Cone and Blizzard.
Well, this is the thing, and it's already getting people very uppity when, and I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, because, guys, I'm happy to bring you back on for another call to touch on this tangent. But just with regards to specifically Cone of Cold, and we've heard Blizzard utter these words in relation to a few things after the beta that have gotten a few people bent out of shape. When they say working as intended, when you hear those words in relation to Cone of Cold, and you get there's a lot of people who love jumping on private server players, but it's funny because a lot of private server players fucking played vanilla. So, a lot of people who love to jump on players and go like, see, they told you it's working as intended. That's how it was in vanilla. But then I often come back to, but these guys played vanilla too. So why are they saying it still feels off? It makes me scratch my head at times. So I kind of want to get to the bottom of it. Like when you used Cone of Cold in the beta and Blizzard says, dude, it's working as intended. It's as it was back in the day. Are you like, well, I don't, think it's working the same in practicality, or do you accept that, yes, that's how it was?
I sort of would take the former, that, it may be, quote, working as intended, but that's where I sort of, in my mind, it gets into how far should no changes go. The Hunter Trap is a great example, because basically what they did was deliberately recreate a bug that would cause Hunter Traps to, quote, sometimes not trigger. And that just adds RNG to a game that is already, it's an MMORPG. It's fairly RNG heavy. So that approach is a little bit frustrating to me. But at the same time, I'm sort of a hypocrite when I say that, because I've always been a huge no changes guy. As for Cone of Cold and Blizzard, I was one of the people that was really loud, like waving my pitchfork for spell batching. And I'm still glad that we got spell batching. I still think that what we were given. I know, buddy. I'm sorry. But I still think that what we were given on the beta is closer to vanilla than it would have been without spell batching. That being said, I was very disappointed in the way that spell batching actually feels on the beta. I'm not a networking guy. I'm not a programmer. I'm a gamer. And, when something feels bad, whether it's quote unquote correct or not, it's frustrating. I can deal with it because, like I said, I'm a no changes guy. If this is what they're giving us, you got to adapt or not play. And I'm definitely not going to not play. And really, what I really wish we had gotten to do is have a few days on the beta of them chopping that spell batching window in half. So let's say the spell batching window is 400 ms right now. I would have loved for them to cut that down to 200 ms because I think that would feel a lot better for every class.
Yeah.
So I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see that. Obviously the game's not out, and I guess there's still some hope that things can be tweaked down the road. But I have to apologize to Mr. North. I understand his anger with me. I do feel partially responsible for this, and there is no getting around the fact that the spell batching on the beta was very, very scuffed.
If you think about it, if you want us to think about it mathematically from this point, and I won't belabor the point, but think about it mathematically, essentially what retail has in terms of a quote unquote spell batching is they try and clear the spell as soon as possible, and that equates to about 5 to 15 milliseconds. And so it still is possible to double sheep, but only within the 5 to 15 millisecond window. If you're advocating, right, from a purely mathematical point of view, if you're advocating for 200 millisecond batching, it is closer, right? Like 200 milliseconds is closer to the retail value of 5 to 15 milliseconds than 400 is. So as much as you say it's still closer to what we had in vanilla, it in my opinion, right, what you're advocating for is better, and no spell batching at all, which is 5 to 15 again, would be also closer to what we would want and better. That's just...
I just wish we could feel. I wish we could feel like multiple variations so that we could say this is what feels good.
Yeah.
That's what I really wish had happened.
Did private servers not feel good to you in terms of the batch?
Some did, some didn't. Chronos 2, I thought the spell batching was really sluggish. Nostalrius, had the trademark like Nost lag. But the first couple months of Nostalrius, when the population was smaller and that lag wasn't there, I thought it felt fantastic.
Yeah, and like Light's Hope Core, Elysium Core, to my knowledge, was 100 millisecond patching.
Yeah, something like that I think would be ideal. And so I think...
Sorry, go for it, mate.
I think we went too far to one extreme with the batch.
Fair enough.
I agree. I was there in the sign. I had the signs in the window. I was there. I was waving. I said, no, don't go to war.
Yeah, North has always been saying that, so I have to nod my head to him on this one because he sort of saw that coming. And I remember the two of us actually we had a direct message conversation back and forth when the spell batching thing first got announced, and North was saying, "Man, I'm really disappointed because even though." In theory, this should be more authentic. I think it's going to feel like shit. And unfortunately, he was right, and it sort of feels like shit.
Fair.
I don't want to exaggerate, but if you spend a lot of time on private servers, the way that classic PvP feels is going to frustrate you for a little bit because it's quite sluggish.
I'll
Yeah, it's
jump
quite
in at this
close.
point, guys, because that's a call we're going to have to do another time. I'm loving where that conversation is going. That can be a little bit of a sneak peek of a call we'll do soon, Ohgee, about, as you say, how far should no changes go, and that can be a bit of a divisive one for us later on. But look, guys, we'll cut back to the mages or people will kill me. Now, real quick, let's just go through some of the other negatives generally, because I think of things like, the squishiness, and you guys are going to say, and we'll get to the positives after this, but you guys will say, oh, but you can avoid the squishiness because you got so much control. And I was like, well, yeah, you do, but when the control goes away and now someone's on top of you.
The thing about the control as well, it's not even just, right, like, I don't want to speak for Ohgee, but speaking as a mage, it's not even about the control, right? It's about the fact that your defense on its own, right, without anything else, right, like raw, like just with talents, is good, right? Ice Barrier is an insanely strong ability that provides essentially a, at max level, 800, right, so long as it's not spelled, 800, right, health heal every 30 seconds that you can, like, double layer up if you get off cooldown initially, that you can, right, triple up with a cold snap. You have the only 2-use 10-second invulnerability in the game that allows you to negate spells that are midair. Right, or something. If something's cast on you, right? Someone casts a rocket helmet on you. Most classes, they have to use something in response to that. They have a delay in terms of how they can remove that rocket helmet. Mage can just block it because it's en route to you. You block that, you walk away. Right? You have so many tools that aren't just. It's not about the control. It's about your defensive potential as a mage is insanely strong. Right. So yeah, it belies the squishiness.
I would definitely agree. I would say that mages probably have the strongest survivability of any DPS class. There's not really another non-healer, non-support class that has something like Ice Barrier, except for Warlocks with a Voidwalker. And to be able to use that, they have to sacrifice their counterspell, which is typically a lot better to have, in a group scenario. So the fact that mages, without giving anything else up, have Ice Barrier is very strong. And like North mentioned, Ice Block is, arguably just a flat out overpowered ability. Hypothermia was added in TBC for a reason, because the ability to, like, back-to-back ice block, especially in a duel, it's insanely strong. So I would say any squishiness, even if you're like a super average player or you're new to Mage, I would say the squishiness is really offset with the amount of survivability you have, especially as Frost.
I knew this was going to happen when I got you guys on the show, you and the Warriors.
It's really hard to sit through a list of negatives with both of us on Mage. Like,
you can't come up with a lot. You've been
playing it for so long. It's really, because it's really hard. And you turn around and say, and most people, I know they would say this, most people would say, oh, North, what about the fact that mages only press one fucking button in PvE?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's not fucking true. That's not
does
true.
everyone else.
That's the thing. Everyone thinks that. A, B, other classes have more of that than Mage. Mage, you're actually, even in MC, people don't realize this. In MC, you're using Scorch. You're using Fire Blast. Of course, you're using your AoE abilities, but you are scorching mobs and fire blasting mobs in MC, and that is the thing that will separate you from other mages, because other mages are only going to be using one fucking button. And you sit there, you throw in a Scorch and a Fire Blast where they don't understand how it fits into the rotation. And, right, you're above them already, right? So it's easy to separate yourself as a mage, as much as it's harder to do in PvP for sure. And you've got this issue of overpopulation, but so many people understand the class really so poorly, given how long we've had our hands on it in both PvP and PvE. But I think especially in PvE, people really just don't get it.
I'm glad you brought that up.
You have so much potential to actually really do well. Like Molten Core, especially, you think about it, half of the bosses are AoE boss fights. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say when I my last two times I raided were with Nope and with Remedy, and in both of those guilds, especially in Molten Core, I probably cast Arcane Explosion as much as I cast Frostbolt, if not more. Like some of those fights in MC, once you have some gear and you just stack the mobs up, you literally just stand there and spam AoE, Arcane Explosion, and everything dies absurdly quickly, right? Like and your DPS is ridiculous.
You're pre-flame striking, right? Like you're actually targeting these abilities, right? Like you're pre-flame striking before the pole is even going down. You're trying to position an AoE ability that, like, right, like it's hit or miss, right? You're saying, okay, where are the three mobs going to be, 3.5 seconds from now? Let's play a guessing game. Right, and you throw that down, and then you have an AoE rotation. It's not too complicated, obviously, right? It's like, Cone of Cold, spam Arcane Explosion, make sure your Oil of Immolation's up, Sapper at some point, user cooldowns. It's not incredibly complex. Reflame Strike with the presence of mind. But it's more complicated than A, people give credit for, and B, than one fucking button. It's a lot more than one fucking button, and I find it interesting. So
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up because I do see that around the traps when people are like, "It's just one button. It's just one button," and people do get involved, saying like, if you think that's it, then you don't get it. There's more to it than that. So I'm glad you said that.
Now, if you're doing the bare minimum, if you're doing the bare minimum, then any class is going to be one button in PvE. But if you're sweating and playing tryhard, then every class is going to be more than one button.
I love it because I've got Twigs TV in Twitch chat saying, stop, I want to play Mage in Classic. You've got to make them sound bad or everyone will roll one. And that might be the case. But look, guys, if I had to force you, if I had to really push you and say, look, taking everything into account, all three specs, the playstyle, everything, we might not have time to go through the negatives of the specs. And as you guys have said, there's not many negatives to cover anyway. But if you had to say something, here's your moment to finally bitch about one thing you wish mages could do that they can't do, or one little thing that just gives you the shits about the class. What is it?
My thing would probably be any situation you're in PvP, no matter what you're fighting, no matter where you are, whether it's a battleground, world PvP, no matter what, if you are focused on something else and a hunter just kind of shows up, you're dead. You're dead. And that's probably the most frustrating thing, is that if a hunter gets like a max range opener on you, obviously you can whip around and blink at him and try to get a slow on him, rank 1 Frostbolt, Cone of Cold, something like that. But if a hunter gets that max range opener, it's unless you use a helm, it's or skull a scatter shot, you're probably not getting out of there. Because a hunter can just kite you to death and they just rip you to shreds. In a 1v1 scenario, you can totally outplay them, but again, if you're kind of focused on something else and they just sort of show up, it's not looking good for you.
North, what do you want to bitch about?
I want to point out the fact that the only negative that he could conjure up was the fact that while AFK, the only other class that has higher range than Mage, will kill you when you're not focused. Okay, A. B, I guess it would be, right, here's the thing though, like people are like, oh, mages are so mana reliant. And then it's like, I actually enjoy the fantasy of being a spellcaster who has a limited pool of mana. I think that's interesting, right? It's like, like your power is your mana and you have to manage it. Obviously, there's not a lot of managing going on. I wish that people, right, like the one thing that I do wish is, the one thing that I will bitch about, is the fact that people will bitch and moan at you for portals and water, in raids, people just like won't show up.
Actually, that gets annoying.
It actually does get really, really, really fucking annoying.
Like sometimes, especially like if you have like big gear or like you're in a really good guild or something and people kind of like know like your guild or like recognize you, like you can't spend 5 minutes in Ironforge without getting 10 whispers asking you for water. And it puts you in this catch-22 because you feel like a huge dick if you ignore them. But if you actually like made water for every random person that whispered you would never be able to play the game because you'd just be crafting water all day.
I have a D&D macro with the price of water that is one silver less than vendor water. Like a full stack of it's 1 silver less than vendor water, just to tell those people to fuck off. Maybe I should not do that to be a nicer person, but I get fed up eventually. But it's like in raids as well. Like people, if you're not in like a hardcore guild, even when I was like in a more hardcore guild, but not super hardcore when I was on Northdale, not with my main guild. People would in the middle of a raid ask for water, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I have to now stop, cast a 3-second cast so that you can and use my mana to give you water because you didn't come to me beforehand when I sat outside of fucking Ironforge, or excuse me, Stormwind, with 50 million stacks of water on 3 alts that I conjured 2 hours beforehand, and you're gonna fucking ask me in the middle of the raid that I should fucking take some fucking conjured spring mineral water out of my ass. No thank you, dude. That's so fucking annoying. And then people bitch and moan, they're like, they heal you though. It's like, well, they can fucking follow directions.
Can I ask
there's a time and a place, and 15 seconds before the poll is not the time or the place to ask for water.
Yes.
Very good. Now, can I ask a general etiquette question? Because I really can't remember what the going rate was back in the day. But if you do start to dispense the water and food in town, or if you are selling portals, is there a price that's offensive? Is there like a what's the cap, or what's the floor price?
Are we talking your max level, or what
let's say max level. What is a portal? What's the minimum tip you wouldn't be offended at for a portal?
I'd say throw me a gold. Like it's something. Maybe like even for like 50 silver is like more than the cost of the portal material. I want to say the portal materials are like 20-25 silver, something like that.
20 silver.
Yeah. So I would say like throw away 50 silver. So
if I throw you 20 silver, and I'm like, dude, it's cost price. Are you telling me to go get fucked?
No, I'm not gonna get pissed. But I'm sort of gonna think, all right, the next guy that asks me for a portal, I'm gonna pretend I'm AFK.
Right.
Oh, I get pissed. If people aren't polite, like if you ask me, like if I look at you and like you look like like you're full of fucking mismatched garbage gear and you're clearly new 60, you're in a fucking 60% mount, and you come up to me, you're like, hey, like, can I please have a portal to Ironforge or Stormwind? I'll give you that portal, Ironforge, Stormwind. You trade me the rune, like you don't even have enough money to do it, right? You give me 20 silver, I don't care, right? Like if you're being a nice guy, that's great. But the people who fucking come up to me and trade me a rune of portal or try and pay me 20 silver for 10 seconds of my very important time, right? Because I'm a cerebral man. I play Mage, okay? I'm very important, obviously. And if you try and come up to me and waste my time like that, I don't know, man. You're not gonna give me, the how do you do? You won't even give me the hey, man, how's it going? Right? Like, and
his apartment has many leather-bound books that smell of fresh mahogany.
Exactly. I'm a cultured man, right? Don't fucking waste my time with. Don't waste my time by not wasting my time with a little idle chit chat if you're trying to swindle me out of food, water, or points.
North, you are bringing it. I love it.
Me. At least woo me a little bit. That's all I'm asking for. Take me out to dinner. Because the absolute worst is when people, like, you'll have people just walk up to you, open trade, and just say water. And is like, no. Sorry, dude. I'm way too busy to deal with your shit right now.
Yeah, no, that's a bit much. All right, guys. Well, look, I knew this would happen. I'm loving this chat so much, and we haven't even really talked about the meat of it yet. But look, guys, we've got to burn through this because I've got poor Joanna in chat staying up late at night for his call after this one. So let's go
rapid fire. Let's go
5 minutes rapid fire. You guys
pop
go
that mind quickening gem. Let's get into it.
Yep, touch on all the specs. You two go back and forth between yourselves. 5 to 6 minutes. Why a Mage is awesome.
In terms of specs?
Do it.
Yeah, if you want to touch on why, like if you just very, very briefly, what's great about Frost, what's great about Fire, what's great about Arcane, what's great overall?
Okay, let's do it in order then. Let's go Frost, Fire, Arcane in that order. Ohgee, you want to start with Frost?
Sure. Frost, one of the strongest PvP specs in the game. Great spec to play with minimal gear. You can be really successful. You have reliable burst damage with Shatter. You have probably the best survivability of any DPS class. Tons of control. Amazing spec to play in any PvP situation. All around fantastic.
All right.
It's also got really good scaling in PvE early on. You've got Winter's Chill. You've got good damage talents. Just generally, you've got Elemental Position, so you've got like a base amount of hit. That's already really good. Moving on into Fire on the PvP end, right? You've got really good RNG stuff that sort of mirrors Frost, right? You've got the impact instead of the frostbite for those stuns. Ignite is such an insane ability. It just makes your crits bonkers. And so when you get a little bit of gear, Fire really starts pumping. Pyroblast from a sheep, no feeling is better than hitting those, 2-3k pyro crits, even without something like, arcane power boosting them up, just, out of your natural CC. And then once you get later into the talents, right, you're just pumping damage, pumping crit, and it feels really, really good to have things like Blast Wave. It also combos really well with the other talent trees, right? There are combinations of Frost and Arcane, Frost and Arcane and Fire and Frost that are very, very popular. Pump, Pyro, and Elemental, of course, that synergize really, really well in terms of their role.
Yeah, Fire is crazy fun to play. I find it a little more engaging in PvE than Frost is. As for PvP, though, like North mentioned, there's some great Fire-based PvP specs. There are at least 2 different specs where you can go deep in Fire and still get Ice Block, which is just absurdly strong because you have tons of burst, and all you're really giving up are improved Counterspell and Ice Barrier. And then you also have, like Ignite Frost, which does have barrier. There's a huge variety of specs that you can go with on a Mage in PvP. And some of those Frost Fire hybrids are just really fun to play.
Okay.
In terms of Arcane, it actually is, it's good for farming. It's not, to be honest, it's not the most interesting tree of all, right? It essentially exists as a funneling for Presence of Mind, improved Counterspell, and Arcane Power. But right, like Arcane Mind, you get mana talents, you get really powerful things. A combination here though that's really understated often is Palm Pyro without arcane power. So people, meme about this 3-minute mage, but if you take half of the 3-minute out, you make sure you only have the palm, so you have an instant pyro, sure, but you don't go for the arcane power, you go for the fire power deep into fire. And so you combine this, we get some of this one spec, we'll go all in, we'll get 10% fire damage.
Then you can get blast
all
wave.
The time. Exactly. You got blast wave on top of it. You're pumping so much burst, which feeds into this idea of Mage, especially in PvP, right? There is a spec for every season. There's a spec for every playstyle. You're not wrong if you don't want to play Ignite Barrier in a Warsong Gulch game. You're not wrong if you want to play Palm Pyro. You're not wrong if you want to play Elemental. You're wrong depending on the context, but all of those are viable. And
your role's just going to be a little bit different.
Exactly, right? And so you can tailor it to how you want it, and so few classes actually have that. A warrior's role will always be a warrior's role, and his spec will always be his spec. He'll have a little bit of adjustability, but he can't be like, am I going to be the burst, cannon today, or am I going to be, the mobile, still CC heavy, still defensive heavy, but burst heavier, or am I going to be the full defense, full CC kit mage, impossible to properly catch, impossible to really kill, right? And you can choose what you want to be.
Yeah, which, touching on that, something we haven't talked about yet is that mages are besides druids, definitely the best flag carrier. Druids are obviously head and shoulders above everything else. But if you're going to give the flag to something other than a druid, it's either going to be a warrior with sword and board surrounded by healers, but in like a clutch situation, mage is probably the best flag carrier besides a druid. There were some issues on the beta that severely nerfed mages in flag carrying. A couple of them were fixed. I'm not sure if all of them have been fixed, but that's probably worth mentioning as well. They make pretty good flag carriers, and it can be really fun to flag carry on a mage. I know anybody that's familiar with my footage knows how much I enjoy that. So like North said, you can really hop into so many different roles on a mage. That there's, if you get bored of playing frost and peeling, you can spec fire and blow people up. If you get bored of that, you can do all kinds of specs, all kinds of funky stuff I've experimented with to sort of turn yourself into a flag carrier. Tons of versatility, and it's all just a lot of fun.
Guys, one thing I'm wondering, and this will be the last question I have before we have to go, but I see, we talked very, very briefly about AoE grinding, farming dungeons and what have you, and also just general PvP, learning how to kite a warrior or just control another class. Is that stuff, if I'm a casual player or a new player to a mage or a new player to vanilla, is that stuff does it take time to learn, or do you pick it up pretty quickly?
I'd say you pick it up quickly. I think Mage is really easy to play on a basic level, but it has an insane skill ceiling. So it's one of those things that's kind of easy to pick up and sort of feel like you're good at it. But then you face some really good players, and you sort of have this reality check of okay, I'm not that good. But in terms of just picking up the class and just killing average people you see out in the world, most people should be able to pick that up pretty quick, I think.
Yeah, the basic kiting schemes, basic mage gameplay. Not really challenging, not the most challenging anyway. Still engaging though, still fun. But I'd say, right, even that specific example, right, kiting becomes very, very different when you're playing against a, say it's a rogue or a warrior who is really making use of every tool in his toolkit, right? Every gizmo, every gadget, a helmet, rocket boots, right? Tidal charms, grenades, etc. You have to start whipping out the same, and right, you have to change how you're kiting other enemies, especially with melee leeway, right, in order to not actually get caught up in them, because if you do make those mistakes, obviously they do deal a lot of damage and you are squishy, right? So
yeah,
it can be tough against good players, and you can feel a little embarrassed at times if you're not quite up to speed there, but every class played at a high level will need to know how to gadget, quote unquote, correctly. So that's a learning curve that everyone will have to deal with. It's not
if you're talking about an average warrior, or a warrior who maybe isn't that focused on PvP, then kiting him is basically like kiting a mob. But if
probably
you're talking
easier
about
than a mob, really, because it's slower, honestly.
But if you're talking about a really good warrior who he is a PvPer and he does have everything and he's using everything, if you make a mistake, you can find yourself losing that 1v1 pretty quickly, believe it or not.
All right, guys, look, I think you did it, whether you shot yourselves in the foot or not, but I think Everyone who's playing World of Warcraft Classic is rolling a mage now after this call.
So once
they spend about 15 minutes with Kona Cold, they're going to re-roll and make a warrior.
Here's the kicker though. Here's the 5,000 IQ take, Josh. And I have a video on why everyone should roll mage also for this take. Mage is really good against mage.
Ah. Wow. Drop the hammer. Why?
Mage actually has like in terms of his skill matchup, you do have counterspell, which locks out, it's the most powerful interrupt in a game, off the global cooldown, 10-second interrupt on a cast, and you have the ability to reset with polymorph. So you couple those things together, it means if you hold your interrupt right and you shield, and you also have Fire Ward and Frost Ward, so you can choose to shield one school, and then you essentially force a mage into another school. And if you interrupt on if you essentially interrupt on that school and try and bait their interrupt, or you catch them on Arcane School, you can endlessly reset against mages. So mage is really if you don't understand the intricacies of mage versus mage, it can feel very, very frustrating. I remember when I first started playing mages and people would just dick all over me because they would just reset 15 times and I had no fucking clue what was going on because they would interrupt me on the right school and then they'd have the right ward up and I'd sit there and I'm just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? He's full health. I have 20% mana and then he just eats my ass.
Yeah. And it's funny because mage versus mage usually plays out one of two ways. It's usually one extreme or the other. It's either a 5-minute duel with a billion resets by both sides, or it's both people just kind of spam instance. Yeah, a lot of times you'll see both people just sort of spam instance, and then it's just kind of an RNG thing.
Two men enter, one man leave.
Very good. All right, guys, look, I would honestly, please believe me when I say this, I could do this for hours with you two, and you've already had me thinking of, we'll have to get you back for the mage PvP call that I do eventually one day. Ohgee, we'll have to do the, when is, no changes, what would you say? Sorry, obviously, how far?
No changes gone too far?
Exactly.
I think it has.
Because I am there. I have been in that camp since day fucking one.
Oh, well, let's do that again soon.
No changes has gone too far,
I need to speak my piece.
I'm part of the problem. I will say that right away. No changes has gone too far, and your boy, I am part of the problem.
Lock it in. Let's talk privately, and we'll organize a time for that one. But look, guys, thank you so much again for being here. You two are two of my favorite guests on the show. Please go ahead, give yourselves the biggest plugs of all time. I know you two are going nuts with the streaming for Classic when it comes out, like me. Tell people where they can find you. Ohgee, go for it.
So my Twitch is twitch.tv/Ohgee Haptix, all one word, and just the letters OG. So OG and then Haptix spelled out. I'm going to be streaming a whole lot starting on August 27th. You can also find my YouTube pretty easily by just searching my in-game name. And then I have a Discord server where I take questions and all kinds of stuff like that. And you can find links to that on pretty much any of my pages.
North, go for it, buddy.
Friendly reminder to my friend Mr. Ohgee that it will be launching on August 26th in America. Don't set your alarm on the wrong day.
Of course. I keep doing that.
But much of the same for me. I will be streaming every day of Classic, Grizzly is going for World First, so I will be up for very long periods of time. But twitch.tv/NorthTheMage, youtube.com/NorthTheMage, Twitter, NorthTheMage. It's all NorthTheMage. Join my Discord. Follow me on Twitch. Do whatever. If you love Mage, you'll fit in.
Absolutely. And guys, look, these two have the Countdown to Classic seal of approval. I really do mean that. I watch these guys when I'm in my spare time as well. There's about, there's a bunch of streamers that I really do gravitate towards and I get along with these two guys. I love them like sons and I'll be hanging out and watching them. So come and watch with me as well. Guys, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Dad.
Josh.
All right, it's time for yet another Countdown to Classic class call. Why your class rocks and why it sucks. And we're now touching on hunters. Everyone's lovable little ranged classes with the pets. And let's get into it with these two crazy hunters on the line. NostalgiaDad, welcome back, mate.
Hey, man. Good to be here.
Good to have you. And, of course, my friend Lokth. How are you, mate?
It's good to be back. It's been a while. Did someone say hunter? I love hunters.
Yes, Lokth, this will be your chance to go nuts. You're very, very passionate. We talk about hunters. But guys, as you've heard on the other calls, let's go through the negatives first, not to sort of get people too down, but let's make them aware of some of the things that aren't so crash hot about hunters. Now, if I gave you a podium, NostalgiaDad, which you now have, what if you had to?
Finally.
Yeah, I know, finally. I know everyone's been saying they love their class so much they have nothing negative to say about it. But if I had to push you, and if you had to bitch about something with hunters, what would it be?
I would say it's the fact that our DPS doesn't scale with gear in the later raid content, like the other classes.
All right. Lokth, what about you, mate? Any points that you don't like?
I'll go on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. That was a level 60 point. I'll go with a level 1 to 10 point. Level 1 to 10 as a hunter, it's the worst goddamn time.
Oh, it's brutal.
People come to die so often. It is absolutely brutal.
And, I mean, even an experienced veteran like yourself, I'm surprised somewhat by that. Like, even you struggle.
I'm getting really, really good at leveling at Durotar, but I still dread getting to the damn trolls. Those things are evil.
Is this at the Echo Isles?
At the Echo Isles. Those trolls are monsters. If you do not find a group for doing those trolls, you are in for a very bad time.
Yeah.
This actually might be worth just skipping that area altogether.
I literally created one.
There is a place you can kite around the back end with them.
I created one the other day and got to the Echo Isles, trying out a hunter, going like, maybe I'll try a hunter for Classic. Let me just go through the first few levels again. And hadn't done one as like a troll or an orc. And got to the Echo Isles and literally quit and said, nah, I'm not playing hunter because it was so fucked. But I'll see how I go in Classic in terms of like my third character that I'm rolling. But guys, look, another thing that gets raised all the time that we should probably touch on, people will be going like, guys, what about having to carry arrows and having to purchase arrows all the time? That's pretty annoying, isn't it? But sounds like you guys might be okay with it.
Yeah, I actually
the arrows
really
never
love
bothered me.
Yeah. Arrows, bullets. I like the idea. Like, at the end of the day, I started playing Warcraft because of the RPG elements, and Hunter has more RPG elements than any class except maybe Rogue, and it's
Warlock.
just amazing, like having to make sure you've got enough arrows, making sure your pet's happy, all those little annoying things that people in the modern game might find annoying. I absolutely love it. They're the best parts.
And the feeding the pets and everything?
Yeah. Got to get that pet happy. You got to bond with him. You got to make him your best mate. It's better than just going out there and, going, okay, random cat. We are now best friends forever. Never feeding it, never doing anything else with it. That's it. It's just like, it doesn't quite work from an RPG standpoint.
What about NostalgiaDad? And Lokth, think of this while I ask NostalgiaDad as well. What about, and I'm going to have to get used to all the classes. I really should have thought this through more when I ask people to bitch about their class. And they're like, I love my class. Why would I bitch about it? But if we go through the specs and we think about those three trees in front of you, if you could, tinker with something or something that you wish you had, or a 31-point talent that you're like, what the fuck is that? Is there anything that you change up that you don't particularly like there?
I think so. The survival tree is really only viable for raiding if you have like 1,000 agility, which is nuts. And so nobody really does it. I wish the survival tree was maybe a little bit more viable, but I mean, I'm very hard in the no changes category, so touch nothing of my precious character. I would say also the other thing is that I always kind of wished that the pets had a little bit more flavor in vanilla than they did. They didn't get as much sort of interesting flair until Burning Crusade. So I would say maybe a little bit more flavor with the pets, because I like the pets and they're fun, and I don't mind feeding them. And I mean, yeah, their pathing is stupid, but like, just don't be a noob and dismiss before you jump over the gap. I mean, it's that simple.
Lokth, how about you?
Sorry, I completely blanked. What was the question?
If you look at the talent trees and
yeah. Okay. Honestly, seeing as NostalgiaDad just talked about survival, I actually want to say I would love to see more scalability in Beastmaster. In vanilla, Beastmaster is a great leveling spec. It's beautiful. You can easily breeze through to level 60, but at level 60 it is a very, very useless spec because the pets don't scale very well at all with how geared the hunter is. So having all those talents buffing up your pet, they're nice, but you're going to get far more benefit from buffing up the hunter itself because the hunter gets influenced by all the gear it picks up. In later expansions, pets do get buffed by how geared the hunter is to a far greater extent, and I'd love to have seen that in vanilla, but obviously not something that happened until much later. Actually, in Burning Crusade, Beastmaster did become one of the better specs.
Okay. It was the top spec, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll push you a little bit on that one, Lokth. You're getting a question from chat from Pat's lovely wife, Caitlin, who's saying that what do you mean by more flavor? When did they dumb down and homogenize pets? I thought they were more unique in Classic.
The pets themselves are very unique in Classic. It's the actual scaling of them. So think, how much damage they do doesn't really increase that much after they hit level 60. Like you could be running around in Molten Core gear and your pet would say do 10 damage. This is just a terrible example. And you could be running around in Nax gear and your pet's still only doing 10 to 12 damage. Like it doesn't increase terribly much over the course of vanilla. Like their abilities and the things that they can do are very unique and very different based on your different pet classes. But the actual damage that the pets do aren't that, doesn't scale that well.
Yeah, you know what? So, because I was the one who talked about, I guess, more flavor, and it's not that they don't have flavor. I guess I should have specified. There's a lot of classes that have quote unquote flavor, but at the same time, you can't really use it because the pets' damage doesn't scale that well. And some of them, their damage is just sort of plain awful, like the turtle. And so they have these cool things that are supposed to make them interesting, but like you're not going to use them because they're terrible. Like the turtles can't hold aggro; they don't have a focus dump. There's a lot of problems with it. So as a result, you're like, well, okay, it's got a cool ability, but I can't use it. I can't do anything with it. So.
All right.
Yeah, so if you're raiding, you're really going to be using one of three pets. You're going to be using either a warg because that has a DPS buff. You're going to use a cat because that has the highest DPS, or you're going to use a wind serpent because they have a relatively high DPS and can get through armor. But at the end of the day, that might
and
not
at range too.
Yeah, and at ranged, but that might not be a thing in Classic because we now know that armor values are a lot lower, so that might not be required.
Sorry, did you say wind serpents can get through enrage?
Wind serpents have a ranged attack and a magic, and that's magical, so they can do magical damage to enemies as opposed to just straight
it's a 20-yard range.
Damage.
Very good, very good. All right, guys.
Also really good for leveling.
Yep. Oh,
because
very good.
you can actually pull things for
They
you.
are amazing for farming, by the way. So if you're farming and tagging mobs, amazing. In fact, it is the best thing to troll other people with if you're competing for mobs. Is you put your wind serpent on aggressive, and then you just stand around like say the mid-30s elementals over by Kargath. If you're farming earth elementals, like you'll always tag the mobs, always.
How about this, guys? You are obviously hunters, and I'm wanting to get you to groan about something. So if I put you in this situation, I say you are a hunter out there in the world, and all of a sudden something gets inside your dead zone or in melee range, and you are now starting to sweat a bit. Isn't that a shitty part, or are you guys so, obviously used to playing a hunter by this stage that you just yawn it off and you can do what you do to get back into range?
I would say normally I'm fine with that. That's how hunter plays. Like, what you do is you'd wing clip it, you'd scatter shot it, you'd feign death and trap it. But as we saw on the beta, one of the really annoying little things that isn't a bug with hunters, because
the
apparently
diminishing
this is
return.
exactly how it was in 1.12, is the fact that Scatter and Trap both share diminishing returns.
Mm.
And it was only like that for a couple of patches. It was from, I think, 110 before, Scattershot and Trap did not share diminishing returns. So you could Scattershot something, drop a trap, and trap something, get a good distance away, turn around and aim shot. Currently in the 1.112 client and the classic client, that wasn't the case. You'd be able to Scattershot something, trap it, and then if you've been slowed, like with a rend or a crippling poison, and by the time that wears off and you get to a decent amount of range, guess what? Your trap's gone, and that rogue's either vanishing and coming for you, or the warrior's charging. It makes it really, really hard. That said, this was at level 40. There is one more version of Freezing Trap to come before 60. So hopefully that'll give a bit more leeway, time to get, that lovely aim shot off that you really want. But it is really annoying. And also, if you go survival, apparently it also has diminishing returns with Wild Instinct. So all 3 CCs that a hunter has share diminishing returns with each other, making them actually kind of useless in tandem.
NostalgiaDad,
except for intimidation in the Beast Mastery tree, which is technically another quick CC. So if you're a hunter and you're leveling Beastmaster, intimidation does give you a quick stun that your pet actually uses, and I don't think that shares a diminishing return with.
Yeah, that one is
Scatter.
the only one that doesn't.
Yeah, so I like that. That's one of the reasons why I like leveling as Beastmaster too, because it's the fastest way to 60, but because nobody really plays it at 60, and people don't quite know what the fuck to do.
Now, NostalgiaDad, if I can just press you a little bit on, what Lokth raised with Blizzard. Yeah, they did comment that, this is working as intended. We have every intention of having that stay the same with the sharing of the diminishing returns. How did you feel when you got told that? And, it seems to be, as Lokth explained it, I want to make sure I'm getting this right, guys. Lokth, you're saying that it did not share diminishing returns in, it did, I'm fucking this up. It did return up until 110.
Yeah, so they were all had their own unique timers from in the early parts of vanilla up until like 1.10. So that's majority of vanilla. And then I think it was 1.11, 1.12, they did share diminishing returns.
Okay.
And then in Burning Crusade, it got reverted back to the way it used to be.
All right.
So there was only a couple of patches where those things share diminishing returns. And unfortunately, Classic is being built during the time when that was there.
Right.
We're not sure if it was actually a bug during that time or not. It's just that it is there.
Okay, so this comes back to the argument that North and Ohgee raised. And NostalgiaDad, I'll throw this one on you. Sorry, thanks for explaining that again, Lokth. I definitely needed a second explanation to make sure I was on the right page. Yeah. So, when Ohgee was saying, there's a funny little backlash going on at the moment to the no changes movement because has no changes gone too far? And with this being a funny little snapshot of the hunter class in 111 and 112 for something that was not there for the vast majority of vanilla and then actually removed again after when Burning Crusade came out, but you're stuck in this picture moment where it was there. How do you feel about it?
So I went back and looked at the patch notes, and I couldn't find. Maybe I missed it, but I couldn't find exactly where it said that these things share diminishing returns. And I, like Locke, I remember in earlier iterations when they did not share diminishing returns, and you could scattershot, freeze trap people forever. If you knew what you were doing. And to be fair, it's really hard to do that. But you could technically just indefinitely scattershot freezing trap and kite them. And so when I heard that this is what we were getting, on the one hand, I was like, okay, well, yeah, this is 1.12. I guess this is no changes. But I thought it was a bug. I honestly thought it was a bug back then that they just kind of fixed when we got to Burning Crusade. So I didn't know that it was, quote, as intended. I have a feeling that it's not exactly working as intended so much as they don't have earlier versions, which is why we got 1.12. And so that's why we're getting it. They can't fix it because they don't have it.
I think it might have actually been a bug from back in the day. Like, it happened during a patch It's never mentioned that they've changed it during vanilla, and then in Burning Crusade, they have a little patch note that says they changed it back, but we don't know exactly why it was changed in the first place. It's definitely not a patch note in the first place. So a lot of people might actually think this was actually a bug to begin with.
Right. That's why I think it was a bug, because they didn't mention it when it changed. And then when they fixed it, quote unquote, they mentioned the fact that they fixed it. Ergo, it would be a bug. Because if it was intended, then they wouldn't have said anything when they fixed it either.
All right. Guys,
and what Carmen says is true, though. Not everything they do is in the patch notes.
Patch notes, that's right. But yeah,
that's very true.
Well, guys, an interesting one to put forward. Definitely, we'll move on a little bit. But one last thing I want to get to on the negatives is Lokth. If I start with you on this one, I mean, would you bitch at all about if people aren't aware, Hunter DPS is said to not do so great post MC? Would you comment on that at all? Or are you totally at peace with that?
Well, obviously they're wrong. I'm going to be top DPS no matter what.
Because you'll be giving yourself all the loot.
That's hey.
I'm getting ash candy.
I might be a guild master. But now have a look at what most guilds are running though. Most guilds are only going to have a couple of hunters. Just like your Druid call, where, the Druid guy said, hey, the great thing about being a Druid is you're going to get all the gear first. Same thing applies for hunters. And hunters are one of the classes that benefits most from tier sets. So you get a hunter in 8 out of 8 Giant Stalker, 8 out of 8 Dragon Stalker. That guy is going to dominate the DPS for friggin' ages while everyone catches up in gear.
Well, and their tier sets drop at much better rates than the other items do. So we'll see a surge early in Blackwing Lair, and then we'll start to drop off. I will say, though, that, if you're doing everything, the trinket swapping, the stutter stepping, the melee weaving, on fights where you get to just DPS, you actually should be in the upper middle of the pack if you're min-maxing. So your DPS isn't bad. You're just not top of the charts. And I'm okay with that because we bring other utility.
I'm okay with that as well.
I'm okay with that.
How about this one? A bit of pushback for you, Lokth. And I love this name. Dad Life Mad Wife in Twitch chat says, but, what about warriors in pre-raid BIS doing more damage than hunters in tier 2?
The parsing doesn't match that.
It doesn't line up?
I don't think so. If you look at the parsing on a bunch of the guilds, it depends on the hunter that's playing, which is part of the problem. Hunter is really hard to pin down because the skill ceiling is so astronomically high and the skill floor is so bargain basement low.
Yeah,
that's why the idea of rolling your face across the keyboard as a hunter is like such a joke, because it was kind of true, especially back in the day. But, once you get a hunter who really, really knows and plays their class well and is min-maxing and is using shot timers and is trinket swapping and all of that stuff, and timing their cooldowns with the other hunters, you're going to see better DPS. I don't, looking at the private server parsing, I don't see warriors in pre-raid BIS doing more than hunters in tier 2. That's not something that I've seen. That's not to say that's not true if you're looking at really great warriors and really shit hunters, but you got to look apples to apples, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And I'm not sure if it was being a bit tongue-in-cheek or not, but definitely something to sort of have a quick think about. But look, guys, let's move on. We've heaped enough shit on hunters. Let's talk about all the good stuff. Now, if I just open up to you guys and say, take the ball and run with it, why are hunters amazing?
Because you can pretty much do anything you want in the game. You want to go solo that, elite quest over there that anyone else is going to die horribly to? Go do it. You want to go solo, some instances level 60. You know what? You're a hunter. You can. Go do it. Like, hunters have this unique situation in WoW, in classic WoW, where they're just able to achieve and do so many unique things that no other class is able to do. And that's really what, I love about hunters. Like, there's no other class where I can go, you know what, that dragon over there, I'm going to have it chase me all the way to Orgrimmar and then get the guards to kill it for me. Like, it's one of these things where it's just amazingly fun. So many different little intricate things that no other class can do. And I feel sorry for anyone who doesn't play a hunter, really.
NostalgiaDad, go for it.
Actually, I was going to say something along similar lines. I mean, you can do just about anything. The idea of not being able to complete a quest because it's 6-8 levels higher than you, that's fine. You can just solo it. I specifically remember in vanilla soloing quests that were red all the time. Like, I just like, oh, it's a red quest, but it's not a group quest, so I can solo that. And if it was a same level elite quest, I could solo that too. You can do just about anything. I mean, there's so back in vanilla, I did a all hunter Upper Blackrock run that was actually just really crazy to watch. And it was really fun. And you can't do that with every class. Some classes they can. Shadow Priest can, hunters can, but hunters can solo Skullomance. They can solo Dire Maul, and not just trash, but like bosses. The Hunter Elite quest alone is worth playing a hunter. Easily one of the harder things that you could do in World of Warcraft.
Best quest in game as well.
Best quest, no questions asked. Do you reckon, Lokth?
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. And yeah, you can kite dragons, you can kite bosses, you can do all kinds of fun stuff. You can pull guards away from flight points to let people kill the flight master. I mean, yeah, all kinds of fun trolling you can do as a hunter.
Good stuff. Well, now if we take a look at maybe the PvP side of things, and Lokth, I'll ask you this. It's something where I'm a bit worried as a casual if I were to roll a hunter, because I kind of feel like for some reason I wouldn't be able. I mean, I'm shit at PvP as it is, and I feel like for some reason I'd be even worse with a hunter. Like, there's a bit more nuance to it, and it kind of scares me away from the class. Like, I'd get wrecked in PvP, even more so than if I was just like a caster or something. At least I can kind of know what I'm doing with a caster. But tell me why hunters are so amazing in PvP and why everyone should fear them.
Because I think they have the best matchup against a majority of the classes. Like, outside of, I think, Warlocks and Shadow Priests, Hunters really don't have hard counters. They're able to deal with all melee classes. They're able to deal with mages. They're able to deal with healers. Like, Hunters just have so much utility that they have an answer for everything. If they're fighting a rogue, well, cool. We've got traps and flares, and we've got Hunter's Mark. Cool. That rogue can no longer stealth. Let's get it killed. And of course, you've got your, things like Scattershot, Wing Clip, and all that stuff to get away. Works against warriors as well. And once you know how to use all these different components, these different pieces of utility together, and it does take practice, but once you have that stuff down, you become this kind of unstoppable killing machine against an equally geared and skilled player, because they're never going to be able to touch you and you're going to be able to kill them at range. When you're fighting against other range classes, guess what? All range classes use mana. Hunters have Viper Sting, and they also have the longest range. So you Viper Sting a target, stay at max range, they are eventually going to run out of mana and you can kill them. If a mage gets into your dreaded dead zone and gets you frozen there so you can't move, you can still feign death and trap them. Like, once you just know the little intricacies of how the hunter plays, you can really just dominate any class given equal gear and skill.
NostalgiaDad, you'd go with that?
Yeah, so hunters have a lot of tools in the toolbox, and they're tools that we don't always use. And I would say that we have the best likelihood in matchups, all things being equal. The sort of discussion of like, okay, yeah, hunters aren't winning the duels. I mean, hunters are not necessarily great for duels anyways because of the way the duels are formatted. Hunters are really good at world PvP and battlegrounds. Every organized battleground group is going to have like a good one hunter on their team. Just like you need a druid flag carrier, you're going to want a hunter too. So world PvP, they're great because of multi-shot and traps. They have a lot of ability to attack from further range. If you're out there questing in the world and you're fighting a mob and somebody comes up to try to gank you, for me, normally what I do is I drop a trap or I scatter shot them and I finish killing my mob. So yeah, they killed me, but at least I got my kill. Or I kill the guy and I go back to doing what I was doing. So I think a lot of times hunters have a lot of options. We are going to struggle because of the changes between melee leeway and the diminishing returns. There's no way around it between private servers and what Classic's going to be. But I think we're going to be able to hold our own in a way that people aren't expecting because the paper doesn't say otherwise.
I have no doubt we'll see a lot of High Warlord / Grand Marshal hunters.
All right. Now, look, something that entices me in considering what character I'm going to roll, what class I'm going to roll, I should say, is an end game rotation. And, I'm still tossing up, I've said before on the show, I'm probably doing a Shadow Priest and a Warlock 1A, 1B type characters. Then I've got this third character that I'm wondering about, and that might be a Druid, it might be a Hunter. But something I have heard, and that a lot of people reiterate, is that the Hunter rotation is one of the most fun at endgame. You actually get to think and press a few buttons, as opposed to having a boring or one button rotation that, some classes, like the Warlock Shadow Bolt, for instance, is one that comes up. But tell me why the rotation or playing a Hunter in a raid is incredibly fun.
NostalgiaDad briefly mentioned it before, but hunters have that massive skilled differential. You can have very unskilled hunters, you can have very skilled hunters. So you could actually break it up into different tiers of what people do to say how skilled they are. Your bottom tier hunter is the guy that rocks up to raid and he presses his two buttons, aim shot and multi-shot, whenever they're available. And he'll just press those buttons and he'll do...
Oh, I'd say there's another tier lower than that, and that's the hunter that casts Serpent Steer and just Serpent Sting and auto shots.
Yeah.
Yes. Rank 1 arcade shot.
Yeah. Okay. Excluding that guy. So the guy who knows which buttons to press, which is aim shot and multi-shot.
That guy will be me.
So basically, if you just press those buttons when they're up, you're actually doing it wrong. So then you get the next tier of hunter, which is a guy who actually understands what weaving is. And weaving is basically what you don't want to do is press aim shot or multi-shot when your auto shot's about to fire. Because if you do, you actually end up delaying or cancelling that auto shot altogether. And you don't want that because that's actually a loss in DPS. So what you need to do is weave your abilities between your different auto shots. So the idea being you start off a fight and you auto shot, you then hit aim shot goes off, auto shot goes off, then you hit multi-shot. You've got to make sure that these abilities go between your different shots, which is why our hunters always strive for slower weapons, because it makes that weaving easier. It gives you more time to fit all of these things in. And then you get the level above that where you then start actually running in there for melee, using swiftness potions, doing a raptor strike when they're available. So it then becomes, I think it's auto shot, aim shot, auto shot, multi-shot, auto shot, run in, raptor strike, auto shot, repeat. So it becomes more and more complex the better and better you get. And it's going to be very interesting to see how many people can get the maximum amount of DPS out of Hunter. Even I think I'd struggle with some of that, some of the later stuff, because your timing is going to need to be impeccable to maximize DPS.
Now, final point. Yeah, sorry, go for it, mate.
No, I was just going to say that, there's sort of, so Kargaz has a great spreadsheet PowerPoint presentation.
Yep.
There's a YouTube video out on it too. And it's got a really great explanation in there, but essentially your rotation breaks down to clipping and full rotation related to aim shot, multi-shot, auto shot. And that is all going to depend upon your weapon speed, your rapid fire, if you're a troll using Berserk, if you have trinkets that are popping. And so it's going to change on the fly in the moment. And it will also depend upon what your raid is using, whether they have tier 2 set bonuses or tier 1 set bonus, and you guys are timing it. It's going to really change. And so one of the things that's really cool about it is you have to actually pay attention. So one, you're paying attention to the boss and the boss abilities. Most of the early stuff, Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, that just means that you're not completely stupid. But besides that, then you also have to watch your actual rotation, what you're doing in the moment. So for me, it's one of the things that makes the class more fun.
Excellent. Well, look, on that note, guys, that's been a pretty good summary of why people should consider playing a hunter. So if you are sitting there at the character creation screen and you're wondering, and you got that little inkling to maybe, do the class that, gets a few jokes thrown its way, but can more than hold its own. I can't speak English. This is my 6th call in a row, but go hunter. Check it out, guys. So everyone, thank you so much for being on this call. NostalgiaDad, please throw yourself a big plug, man, or whatever. What have you got going on at the moment? Where can people find you?
I have a podcast, but I'm kind of taking a hiatus from that at the moment. It is called Childhood Remastered, but we're taking a break because I'm getting ready to have a baby. So excited for that. But my guild is recruiting. If anybody wants to come and play with some semi-hardcore guys who just want to hang out and have fun and let you play whatever you want, we are Upside Thy Head, and you can PM me in Discord if you want, and I can get you info. So and shout out to my old guys on Lightning's Blade, Virtuous, Horde side, and also to the guys that I played with on Calicos in Burning Crusade, the It Was Lag guys. Just a big shout out to you guys, because you guys made me love WoW.
Very good. And congrats on the new bub coming in, NostalgiaDad. That's a West Coast guild, by the way, isn't it?
We're Central. We're going to be playing Central. We raid 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Too easy. Lokth, shout it out, man. Where can people find you? What's going on?
You can find me on twitch.tv/Lokth, Lokth. I stream video games. I haven't done so in about a week and a bit, though. I've been a bit sick. Should hopefully be back up to it next week sometime. Otherwise, I'll shout out my guild as well. So if you're looking for a Horde guild on the Oceanic servers, maybe Grim Fortune is where you want to be. We have some familiar faces from the Countdown groups if you're interested in that as well, but we are not a Countdown guild itself. We do plan to be pretty damn good, and hopefully it's going to be excellent. And I'll do a shout out to my old guilds as well, seeing as NostalgiaDad just did it. Shout out to my vanilla guild, Covenant, and my second vanilla guild, Mediocrity. If any of those guys listen to this podcast, come find me. I want to talk to you.
Very good. And yes, you will have certain Countdown members running around with you in game. And guys, look, thanks so much for that. I will say this. Look, Lokth streams, and it's funny, Lokth, I haven't told you. Well, I think I might have told you this, but you're one of Patricia's favorite streamers, and I get a big kick out of your streams as well. So people, if you're watching during, Aussie friendly hours or what have you, check out Lokth's stream. I really do recommend it. But guys, thanks so much for popping by, and we'll speak to you next time.
Thanks, Josh. Always fun.
Glad to be here.
And that's the show for today, everyone. Look forward to plenty more class chat coming next week, along with a bunch of other fun calls as we really celebrate launch month here at Countdown to Classic. But before you go, let's do the thank yous to the following patrons: Aero PC, Anti, Bear of Pain, Binger, Brandon K, Bubba, Callum F, Chunky Dunk, CJ, Damien A, David F, David J, Dufficus, Gecko Mayhem, Halsey Spartan, Henrik B, Herbert, James S, Jamie S, John HC, Josh W, KSir37, Minoru, Moonbacho, Paul E, Randall H, Rasmus S, Rarebit, Rick S, Ryan K, Sylvia K, Stov, Tim B, Tim S, Tom S, Twigs, and Zudamos. And of course, the very dedicated, legendary patrons of Countdown to Classic. An extra special shout out and thank you from the bottom of my heart to those who dig very deep for the show every month. In 8 Count, Batlord, Billy C, Eric S, Firespit Kitten, Flozy B, Freaky Fritz, Galgamere, Ida B, Carl W, Nick B, Palfurus, Pats Knights, Sierra S, The Anton, Wilson Mar, Vanathak, and Valarko. Thank you so much for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be on the air without your support. So that's it for today, everyone. Have a great rest of the week. Just 19 more days. Fun fact, that's less than 20. Get on board the hype train, everyone. Azeroth, as we knew it, here we come, baby.